please all rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to thank you all for coming to this public session on July 24th.
And remembering that I was at 6 and not at 5.
And remembering it was at 6, yeah. Unless some of you have been here since 5. We usually don't, every other meeting, don't have an employee of the month. But I've got something here that I would like to share with all of you and share with Charlie in the back, because Charlie came before this board, I guess, many months ago, I think it was, Charlie, and he brought an American flag that was found in New York the day after 9/11. And I know Charlie had a tremendous amount of compassion about this flag, and he gave it to the village. He said he felt that it should fly in the village. So Charlie, I took the opportunity to have it framed, and I will read what it says on it. It says, property Charles A. Styler, flag from New York City, 9/11/2001, 9/12/2001. One of the many flags that were immediately placed on cars late that day, picked up from the street in New York City.
Yes.
Charlie, thank you.
Thank you.
To donate that to the village of Southampton, and a little background on it is it seemed like every vehicle in the city of New York at that time had a flag flying on it. There were so many, but many of them fell off and wound up in the street. And I guess I took my life in my hands once in a while, stopping to pick them up. I picked up about a dozen of them, and that's one of them. So I'm very pleased to give that to the village of Southampton in perpetuity. Thank you.
And Charlie, we all thank you for your service and your dedication in picking up such a vital thing, because certainly 9/11, none of us will forget. Thank you very much. Charlie, we're going to put that in the hall, because those halls look like you're in the middle of a hospital. There's no, there's nothing on them. Nobody, I believe, signed up for public comment, but is there anybody from the public that would like to make a comment?
It's not involved with the public hearings.
Right.
No? Okay. So we move on to board presentations, and we have Gary with your payloader.
Good evening. I was here at 5 o'clock, nobody told me. But I'll know for the future.
Are you just setting us up to buy that payloader?
Well, I like when you smile.
Sympathy card.
Let's hope third time's the charm here. The board has been very good to us that we have bought 2 pieces of equipment over the summer months. And the last item that we had asked for, which we've spoken about for 2 meetings, is a new payloader for the highway department. We have a 1995 CAT, so that's 23 years old, well worn. It's been a good machine for us, but it's getting tired. We have to fix it quite often, and it doesn't seem to have the strength it used to have. And what we're trying to do now is we're trying to go to a larger machine. As we've bought larger dump trucks, we'd like to get larger bucket loaders to make the work go a little bit quicker, a little more efficient. So tonight, we've looked at 4 different loaders, and one loader the Highway Department would like to purchase that I agree with is a Hitachi loader. Little background, we're going from a 96 horsepower in the old Cat up to 168, and an increase in the bucket size from 1.8 to 3 yards. Again, move a little bit more, fill a little bit faster. This would be available on a Town of Huntington contract, so there wouldn't be a need for a bidding process. And we have demoed 4 machines. This is the one that the consensus is that we all seem to like. And I have spoken to Town of Riverhead and Town of East Hampton, who've bought these machines, and even East Hampton bought these machines to replace old Cats they had. So it's a good, powerful machine. We've taken it out on the beach, did a demo there. We're very happy with the performance. And I've also dealt with Town of East Hampton and Riverhead about maintenance on the machines, and they said All Island Equipment has been a very good service company for them. So I'm coming to you tonight to ask for a purchase of this.
Could you refresh my memory, Gary, on the Cat 914G, how old it is and what mileage we have on it?
That was the 1995. Okay, and we have an hour rating on it of 10,000 hours.
Is that considered a lot of hours? I have no idea.
No, well, you know what it is? If you were in a private construction company, that machine would be running all day, every day. But in the village, obviously we have tasks that sometimes involve it and some don't.
So we are replacing it because you're looking at a trade-in of $12,000 on it. We're replacing it to get a piece of equipment that does twice the amount. Is that correct?
Not necessarily twice, but a great deal more.
Bigger
Correct.
payload bucket.
More power, more bucket size. It will actually lift things that the Cat can't. There's a lot of concrete product that we move around, drainage structures, et cetera, that the old machine can't pick up.
Now, Gary, would this be available by the winter? Should we have another period of snow that we had?
Yeah, well, the salesmen always tell you it's 6 weeks, but I would say it's probably going to be close to 12 weeks before we would receive this.
Okay.
There are no demos or any units in stock anywhere. Everything does have to be made and be shipped here.
And are you going to trade in the Cat, or are you going to sell that outright?
I prefer to sell it. You have that $12,000 figure there. I would ask almost double for that. So I know I will have no problem selling it for $12,000, but I think I can get a good deal more.
Okay. And then the other question, just a comment that I'm always amazed, is every time you have a foreign made piece of equipment, this being a Hitachi, it has a Cummins engine in it. Yeah.
I don't know if it's just
Somebody could
standard.
explain to me why that always works that way. And
Well, I'd have to defer to the central garage to give you a little knowledge, or I could ask the salesman on your behalf. But it's the most common engine that comes in these machines.
Is that a foreign-made engine, or is it an American-made?
American-made.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Most generic, I guess. I know the answer to that.
Gary, how are you handling the concrete and drainage now?
We have a second payloader, so we always run 2 payloaders. One's a Volvo and one is the Cat. And the Volvo can just about lift things. So what we try to do is we go with smaller structures. We've started doing drainage in the village because we can save some money doing that way. So right now we're putting in 4-foot rings or 6-foot rings. We'd like that up to 8-foot rings, just larger structures. So the Volvo can do it, but it's a little precarious, and we like that little extra lifting strength to be able to, do what we need to do.
How old's the Volvo?
The Volvo, I believe, is a 2003. And again, we wouldn't be getting rid of the Volvo. We'd be keeping that for the second machine because they both run about 4 days a week, and in the winter we need all hands on deck for those machines for snow. Once we push it all into the street here, and we're trying to get it out as quick as we can, the larger the loaders, the faster we can get Main Street back to normal.
Would
A
we,
bigger dump truck.
Well, we have two.
But don't give him any ideas.
I know, I'm just joking. That'll be next, we need a bigger dump truck for that.
Well, yeah, it's back and forth. We'd always love larger dump trucks, you know. It's good, I hate to say the word toys, but they're good to have. But because the village gets so busy, it's a lot of times it's hard to run these large trucks. So we keep a little fleet of two for all the heavy-duty moving, and then we run around with a lot of 7-yard trucks for all the smaller tasks, so we can weave in and out of the summer traffic.
if we purchase this and you could use it for the, hopefully, not for Easters that we, for no Easters that we got last year, but if we were to get that type of weather pattern, would we reduce the need for some of our contractors that we bring in?
Yes, we would. And actually, we've done quite a few storms where we have not brought in contractors. It really has to be an extreme. You know, if we're anything a foot or less, we can handle ourselves now, and we have. But if we start getting up to a 2-foot snowfall, then it's just too much too fast, and we need more machines, not bigger machines. But yes, but once the storm is done, you know, if you double the size of your bucket almost, then, you know, you're moving the snow a lot faster, or loading the trucks a lot faster.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, Gary, I think that, one, you had originally budgeted this in your budget for this year.
Yes.
And two, sometimes 3 times there's a charm. And
That's a merit. Yes, from.
Oh, boy. There is a picture of it in your books, too, if you want to see what it is.
and if you think you can get more than 12,000 for outright sale, that would be great. So I would like to make a motion that we allow them to go out and purchase this Hitachi ZW180-6 wheel loader.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you very much.
The resolution should just reference that it's pursuant to the hunting contract.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Gary?
Next on presentations is, to me, a very important and logical aspect of controlling what we have as a deer problem, a deer nuisance in the village. We've sat here and heard a number of hearings on fences, and it's not that I'm not real fond of fences, but I can understand their importance, especially when I look around my house and there's nothing but sticks where there used to be plants. But I think that fences are only one aspect of controlling deer populations, and that you need to have an individual that understands deer and deer movements and does really a more management system of culling deer in conjunction with fences, and then you might be able to begin to put an impact on them. So Michael Testori is here, and he's going to give us a brief presentation on controlling deer through culling, and he's Hunters for Deer.
Yes, sir. Hi. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, trustees, for inviting me tonight. I'm the president of a 501c3 not-for-profit deer management organization. What we do is we work with municipalities as well as private property owners to put vetted, insured hunters onto their property. What we also do is we do criminal background checks on these hunters so that we can say that we've done our due diligence to make sure that we put the best person on your property. I do not run a recreational hunting program. When we talk about hunting, everybody really thinks about recreation and guys going out and wanting to be one with nature. My program is specific to residential and urban environments. Usually when a a municipality and property owners start talking about fences, that's when they should have probably started talking about deer management. And then I always reach out to the municipality, as well as the mayors or the trustees of that area, and offer to provide my services to them for free. My program has always been for free. The benefit to my hunters is access to areas that have too many deer. All the deer that we do take are utilized for food, whether it be by the hunter or we create a program where deer can be donated and property owners, unsuccessful hunters, can have access to that animal and have it processed for food. Fences do work, but there's certain fences that you would need to be successful for any deer management program. If you go by New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's 2012-2016 deer management program, they always say there's no silver bullet in deer management. They also recommend multiple approaches to obtaining that goal to reduce deer numbers in an area where there's too many. Back in 2013, when we first formed Hunters for Deer, one of the biggest thing was how many deer are there. Everybody wants to count deer and know how many deer are in any given area. The problem is it's really not about the numbers of deer, because they're not going to be evenly spread out when we talk about numbers. The DEC used to say there was 30,000 deer in Suffolk County, which would equate to 32.89 deer per square mile. I ran a program the first year in Remsenburg, which is a small little hamlet, residential, 3.6 square miles. They weren't really worried about how many deer there were, because they knew they were hitting them with their cars. They knew that they were having ticks. They were picking up ticks in their yards, because the deer would make those ticks travel further distances. They were worried about their plants being destroyed. I always say it's the big three, ticks, vehicle versus deer, and indigenous plant species and ornamental plant species being destroyed. The other side likes to talk about sterilization programs. I run a pro-hunting organization. In the past, I have worked with other stakeholders or groups, and I actually have spoken in front of this board 5 years ago. Those techniques have not been quantified. Sterilization, ovariectomies, PZP. But what they do is they still allow that deer to roam around in the area, carry ticks, get hit by cars, and eat indigenous and ornamental plants. I always say culling's a dirty word, because I feel as though people have a negative connotation to it. They think that it's just you going out and you're doing bad things. But my program's not designed to annihilate a species, where sterilization pretty much is. Because if deer only want to do two things, they want to look to eat and get food, and they want to look to make another one of them. That's all they do. So I think when you talk about Southampton Village and its 6.8 square miles, and you have properties north of the highway that are a third of an acre, and they're all on top of each other, you really need to put together a comprehensive approach to how can we deal with the problems the property owners are coming to you and saying, this, something needs to be done. I want an 8-foot high fence. Because 8 foot's the only fence that deer are not going to be able to jump over. And it have to be a wire mesh fence. But fences also will push deer into the roadways. We did a study in Southampton Town a few years back, and we targeted, I think it was 12 areas in the township that had the most deer versus vehicle collisions. Most of those areas were involved with fencing. There was fences that were pushing the deer into the roadways on those spots. Fences also create obstacles for other wildlife that need to traverse the area as well, so that they can survive. You think about the two things deer like to do, well, coincidentally, those are the 2 times of the year that we have our conflicts with deers, when they're looking to eat and they're looking to mate. And those things are important, I think, with any program, is education and sharing it with the members of your community and making it accessible to them. Hey, deer mate in October, November. These are times to be cautious. If you see one deer run across the road, be prepared to stop, because there might be 2 following it. So as a more comprehensive approach, and if you want to look at fences, that's great. But like anything, you always have to think about the weakest link. And the weakest link of a fence is the gate. So that gate has to open, and the gate has to close to let deer in. And there's cattle grates that people put in front of their driveways, which, will stop deer when the gate is open. So these are just things to think about when we talk about fences. I think when people are starting to ask for fences, they're really crying out and saying, I want something done now. What can be done now? Back to Remsenburg, 3.6 square mile community, inundated with deer. We had 90 property owners that wanted to participate in our program. What we do is we would map out the area and strategically place stands near deer corridors. Deer are creatures of the edge habitat. And we put stands on those properties and we filled them. Recreational hunters will hunt probably 6 times a year. Their time is valuable. They want to spend time with their family. They want to spend time at work with their friends. And when in that deer stand, they want to shoot a deer that has antlers. That was one of the problems that the DEC had when they created a nuisance program, which was deer damage permits, and they took them away from hunters because hunters were abusing the privilege of being able to shoot deer outside of the season or during the season, and there was extra tags available. What I do with my guys is my new guys, I bring them in and they have to shoot 2 does before they shoot a buck. You shoot 3 does before they could shoot a second buck. What that does, you got to keep, it's a crazy balance between the property, what the property needs, what the property owner wants, and what the hunter needs to have a symbiotic relationship. Property owners usually have 3 or 4 deer that frequent their property and their neighbor's property and the other neighbor's property, and they live in a little woodlot next to them. The other side will tell you that we overbuilt and we took away the deer's habitat, and that's why they're all over the place. But that's part of the case in terms of, yeah, we might have overbuilt, but the truth is that they didn't have the nutrition needed to survive in the woods that they are living in and the CPF properties and the woodlots that they do bed down in, because they decimated any food source that could be there. That's why the understory, from the bottom to 6 feet up, you can see through the forest. But what we do is we give them, we enhance and we supplement their habitat with our gardens and our plantings. So if you're going to provide an animal with food, water, and shelter, you're going to attract an animal to come to that property. So again, it's part of a comprehensive approach to thinking about, do you have a bird feeder on that property? And maybe that's why the deer are coming over there. Does the neighbor have a fence where they can't get through and he's pushing them onto your property? A lot of the properties that I get to manage, whether they're big estates or if they're small properties and it's a team of neighbors that want to engage in a pro-hunting program, it's all the same things. They say the same thing. Over the past 15 years, we didn't see as many deer, and it's lack of a proper deer management program. And when I first started out running Hunters for Deer, my argument was hunters can do it for free. And we were very rah-rah. And I heard other organizations like White Buffalo, Anthony D. Nicola, who does do sterilization, and he would say, hunters can't get the job done. And it would make me angry, but it was the truth as I started to run my own program. Because when we were in Remsenburg, what I had to do was I had to train my hunters to change the way they thought, their thought process. And it goes back to what I said before about the difference between a recreational hunting program and a management program. recreational hunters have limited time, want to be more of an opportunist, and want to have antlers when they go home. A recreational hunter is someone that's out there for the sport of it, for fair chase. My program isn't designed to make it easier on the deer getting away and being a challenge. My program is designed to have a hunter elevated, be able to take a shot at a deer broadside or quartering away at 20 yards and recover that animal and then take it off the property. I won't get into the logistics of removing deer. That can be for another time because I don't want to hold everybody up. But I do want to stress that I have had calls. I serve as a constable at West Hampton Dunes. I worked in law enforcement since 2004. Prior to that, I worked in TV, and one of your village residents that I just saw tonight was my first boss at National Geographic. After 9/11, I became a cop. I have a nuisance wildlife control license. I live in East Quogue. I've always, had the opportunity to be on the East End, although I did not go to high school here. I think that the East End has a culture of hunting and fishing. This conversation is a lot harder in Eaton's Neck, Huntington. In 2014, we spearheaded change in legislation with the help of Assemblyman Thiel and Senator Laval, which gives us the opportunity to even provide you with the deer management program, archery, strictly archery related. We had a 500-foot setback, which basically would take out 60% of the land available to hunt. So if you had a cul-de-sac with 4 houses on it, and one property owner didn't want hunting and the other houses did, you had to be your tree stand, whichever property it was on, and I could actually hunt off the rooftop of the property if I have consent from that property owner. The property owner that doesn't want hunting near them, that stand location and the discharge of that arrow has to be 150 feet away from the nearest point of their house. It used to be 500 feet, and we got that changed to 150 feet. And what that did is if you picture 500 feet around a house and the tree stands here, and we got it reduced, we now have 60% more area where we can have a hunting program. Eaton's Neck, Eaton's Harbor Corp reached out to us in 2014 to get hunting in Huntington. Huntington did not allow hunting, which is weird because it's in their name, and they were against it. And we spearheaded them giving permission to allow hunting. A lot of municipalities have older laws that are on the books, whether it be in regard to discharge or hunting in general, and Huntington allowed hunting. And it was crazy because it is emotional on the other side, but it doesn't make sense to me because you say you want to do what's right for the animal, but yet you're annihilating its species off the face of the earth when it is sterilized and it can't reproduce anymore. My program's not designed to kill every deer. My program's designed to take the ones that are coming into conflict with the property owners and reduce the amount of conflict so that people can live with them and they can utilize the food resources that they can, get to. Fences will push deer into roadways, but they also will push them onto the property owners that don't put fences up, causing conflict with neighbors. So then you have an internal problem.
Mike, maybe the trustees would like to ask you a couple of questions. Sure.
Are you, I didn't think you mentioned this. Is yours strictly a bow and arrow hunting?
Yes, it is.
No weapons.
We don't do firearms because of discharge laws. You have to be 500 feet. In a residential setting, bow hunting is the most effective to reduce deer conflicts because of the 150-foot setback that we are able to enjoy. It should be a 0-foot setback. But Assemblyman Thiel asked me to not push that issue, so I will not as of right now. 150 feet gives us enough properties, and it gives us, it helps us work with the community. If someone doesn't want hunting and they're very adamant and the neighbors want it, we can always work around that. We can say, well, we can probably target the deer from this area, and that person, we won't cause any conflict for them. The problem is you have people that love the animals so much that they want to take care of them and make them their pets, so they feed them. And they cause more of a problem. And that can cause other issues for the deer, between chronic wasting disease and other things. So I've had clients contact me, and they have their property fenced in, and they have all their plants decimated, and the property manager said, probably got 10 or 15 deer, they broke through the fence. This was a nylon fence. Landscaper hit it with his mower, ripped it, and then they sewed it with zip ties, but the deer was still on the property. They still had a cattle grate along the driveway and left the doors open and the gate open, and the deer didn't get out. We ended up setting up on the property, and we took 2 deer off of it. 2 of the largest deer, 2 of the largest does I've ever seen. They were fat, but there are other concerns when you talk about fences that you should be aware of. Fences also block younger animals. So the mother might make the fence, but the fawn can't. Deer, not stressed, cannot clear an 8-foot fence, but if they are pushed, whether it be from a landscaper or a hunter or some other type of activity, they can clear that fence, and you will see in the area that they do jump over it. So my recommendation to any municipality, any community, I don't need to work with the municipality. I can always work with a property owner. I choose to work with municipalities just to give them free advice and advise them as to the problems that we have seen and we have had in creating our program in Remsenburg and Eaton's Neck. Each of them had their own unique issues. Eaton's Neck was more of a political issue, where there were other hunters that wanted to be a part of the culling program, and they were trophy hunters. And that is not something that is going to benefit Southampton Village or the property owners. You need management hunters that will take the deer out, be professional, and remove them from the property.
You came in 5 years ago, I remember. I was here.
I was skinnier then, right?
So was I. Well, not actually.
But I didn't take your advice. I didn't let my hair grow.
Actually, I think I lost a little bit, so we reversed. But in any event, actually, I was in favor of doing something with what you were presenting.
Right.
Different board at the time, you have a different audience now.
Right.
Which is good. But in any event, what's different with your program now? Because you said you've changed, you learned, you evolved since 5 years ago. What's your success with Remsenburg? How long did that take? Where is it at now?
Remsenburg, because we had so much community support and we had access to so many different properties, that we were able to see success within two years of our program. The first season, what we did, when I go back to counting, and there's companies that offer to count deer and tell you how many deer are there, and I say it's not about the numbers, it's about the damage or the conflicts. What conflicts are they causing?
That's an interesting point, actually. That's a very good way
So,
to put it.
if you see in plant species and you see being destroyed, and you see arborvitae 6 feet high shredded, you got more than 15 deer per square mile. That's a fact. So, which is unhealthy. They say if you want to reduce tick numbers down 90%, you want a program with 5 deer per square mile. That's not going to happen. So at Remsenburg, we figured when we counted 3.6 deer per square mile, we figured it was 80 deer per square mile in that area. But we also have CPF properties that became safe havens for the deer as well. So we preserve land, and we say this land is preserved for future generations, and we let it overgrow, and it comes back from successional.
So obviously, you set a goal on, maybe not so much, but I guess in some way, a numerical goal on what to...
Not really numerical.
So how do you set your goal?
So we
How do you
can't
get it?
be
How do you achieve
everywhere.
it?
We can't be everywhere, right? I can't compel a property owner to give me access.
Right.
So I'm going to take as many deer as I can. Like I said, you usually have family groups that stay on 3 or 4 properties, and those are the 4 or 5 deer that are causing conflict with that property owner. I remove those 4 or 5 deer. You got 4 houses that are happy. They have instant relief, right? But other deer will move into that area. Deer do not migrate, they emigrate, but they don't, and immigrate, they don't migrate. So the first year we shot 71 does, 2 bucks. And that's just data that I was able to keep for myself through what my hunters did. Other hunters were in the area and they were hunting, so they could have taken 10, they could have taken 20 deer. The following year, we took, I think it was 38 deer. And it wasn't because we were bad shots the second year, it was because we were seeing less. And then the third year, I think we went down to like 33 deer. And then the fourth year, about the same in the low 30s. And that's to be expected, because you're going to take a large number of deer right off the bat, because deer do get educated, right? And then once you reach a comfortable number, now all you're doing is looking to reduce the population by over 20%. Because if you take 20% of the deer population, that only covers the recruits, the fawns that are born in June. Back to numbers in DEC and 30,000 deer in Suffolk County, hunters only take 3,000 deer a season. So that's 10% of the deer population. So what I just told you, in order to bypass and take a little bit more than that recruitment number every year, 10%, you're falling behind the 8 ball. You're not taking the right amount of deer. You need to take 30% in Suffolk County of that take. And you would see 9,000 deer, you'd start seeing deer numbers decline in the area. But most hunters, they're not in a management program. They're not management conscious. They should be, because it would benefit them. They would shoot better deer, better bucks if they shot more does, because you're reducing the competition for food. And if you shot older deer, you would have more older deer in the property. So deer need a couple of things to be able to be trophy animals, and that's not important to this
So how many years
conversation.
in Remsburg then? So you're
5.
5 years.
5 years.
Is it complete, or is it an ongoing process, or how do you gauge that?
So our program is not something that you would stop. You would move it around and move the puzzle pieces around and reevaluate and have discussions. We keep data. For instance, we keep weight and tick data. And we're not counting every tick that's on a deer, but what we do is we ask our hunters to fill out it's a digital form, and they tell us, for instance, we have 4 properties, we've seen these deer, we took these deer off the properties, like 2-3 ticks on the deer. Then we were hunting in a cemetery, and the deer would have over 100. And we kind of attributed that to the fact that these property owners were all spraying. So I asked the homeowners, you spraying for ticks? What are you doing? And, yeah, we sprayed 3 times during the season.
So in Remsenburg, it's 3.5 square miles.
Yes, and you're what, 6.8?
So you've removed, then, if my math is right, 4 years of 369 plus 180 deer?
Almost 200 deer.
Over a...
Through bow hunting.
Over a 4-year period.
Yeah. And all those deer were utilized for human consumption. Another thing that we do is we have an 18-foot by 8-foot refrigeration cooler. I've been trying to work with Southampton Town for 5 years to get a place to put the cooler. Southold has a program like this. Shelter Island's probably the originator of it, where we have a venison donation program where hunters can donate deer to the cooler, and other hunters, residents, and property owners could come and take that deer and have it butchered. That was a cool program. We participated in being a venison donation coalition processor, where we were processing deer, but by the time we paid insurance and the butcher, it wasn't really cost effective. We were getting $2 a pound for the meat that we were able to donate. Some of the deer we were only getting 12, 13, 14 pounds. You get $30 for it. It didn't really work. So the best thing that we found was use our network. We use like Facebook sometimes to say, hey, we have a deer, does anyone want it? And then they could come and the hunter would meet that person and give them the animal. That's always good because it's an extra source of protein. It's a shame to not use that resource,
How do you gauge
You're
success? I'm sorry.
You're saying your 200 deer that you took out in Remsenburg was all utilized?
Yes, every single one of them.
But the NRA has a program of donate venison
Yep.
that they use to feed
Yeah, Hunters for Hungry.
Hunters
Yep.
for Hungry, so that there are a lot of programs.
Yeah.
The venison wouldn't go to waste.
But they sound good, and they're good things to bring up because it does do good. But all that meat has to be chopped, so it's into hamburger meat, so it can be easily processed, and they get chubs of the meat. There's nothing like taking off the back strap and being able to give someone the steak. So that's why I always like the program where they can take it to a butcher and have it butchered, and they can have it cut the way they want. And utilize that. We have people that have animals that reach out to us. Sometimes it's very warm outside. That's what's important about having a cooler, because by the time the hunter gives the deer time to expire and then he recovers it, he might need to cool it down prior to processing that animal. So it's nice to be able to do that. And we've had deer that it was too warm by the time they recovered them, and if they were to be wasted, I have another outlet, and it's always been the Quag Wildlife Refuge. They had this bobcat for a long time, Bobby, who passed away 2 years ago, not from eating venison, I'll tell you that, but from old age. And they also have birds of prey that utilize the resource as well.
You had mentioned that it was the homeowner participation in Remsenburg was very high. How did that come about, and what do you define as high?
They had a Remsenburg association, so they were able to communicate with all their property owners, whether it be through emails or a meeting. And other villages, municipalities, and Eaton's Harbor Corp would also send out questionnaires to property owners saying, would you be interested? Now, how Eaton's Harbor Corp's program wasn't that great, because what they did was they made the hunters go and knock on the doors to seek permission from the people that were, I would probably have hunted. That does not work. When you have hunters knocking on doors, nobody's going to support a program like that. So my recommendation would be for the village to take control of the program, just like kind of Quag's program does, just like North Haven did with hiring my friend John Rochetta. And what you do is you have a deer manager, and you have the property owners contact the deer manager. You put together a plan using GIS. You map the properties that are saying we will have consent. And what we do on our consent forms is I have 2 check boxes. One says to hunt and harvest and recover. One says just to recover and be within setbacks. And what that means is the property owner might say, hey, I don't want a hunter on my property. I'm a private person. I don't want a hunter on my property. But if you need me to be with, because the stand should be here and I'm 100 feet from that stand, you could be within the setback. And that's a great relationship. It's important.
There's also deer hotspots we're learning, so several organizations have said they can map that out. How do you?
They can.
Well.
Yeah, they have fleers, and they fly them in drones in the winter time, and they see all these little orange and red dots. Yeah, that's a waste of money.
So I wasn't going there, but the point is deer congregate in certain areas is what we learned. That's what I meant. Not that we're counting, not that we have drones. So your success in Remsenburg happened to be you had a lot of participation, but if you don't have a lot of participation, how do you address that?
It's a great point, because what happens is deer are smart, and they're going to be educated by other deer. So it's just like the old duck hunter, the goose hunter. Don't shoot the 2,000 flock when they're hanging over the blind, because now you just educated 2,000 birds and you only shot 3 of them. So when you have a program and you have access issues, yes, there is the potential that those deer will go to, I call them safe haven spots. Any deer manager that runs any type of a program, whether it be upstate and they get other properties involved in having a management program where they're going to grow trophy bucks, put in food plots, they all create a safe haven area that they can't shoot in. So the smart bucks go into the safe haven area and they live to maturity. A deer 3.5, 4.5 years old is what's going to be a trophy animal for most hunters. 1.5, 2.5-year-old deer are young, they're not going to have as big of a rack. So safe haven areas are an issue. And it's the same thing, like you said, with property owners that don't want to participate. I cannot compel a property owner to give me access to hunt for deer, and I cannot compel a property owner to give me access to recover a deer. But what we want to do is we want to create a program where property owners realize there's a problem, they want to work together, and they want to do something about it. And if someone is that adamant that they don't want hunting, then you don't go near their house. You put a big red circle around it and stay away from Mrs. Woods.
You worked with the town on their deer management program, and the town's endeavored a lot of different efforts, one being educating people, because ticks can be carried by other animals than deer. So how to wear protective clothing, and deer will run out if you have deer fences, or they'll run out, period.
Right.
And, what can you do? Deer whistle was recommended. Also,
On the vehicles?
On the vehicles, and then...
I support those. Everyone else will laugh at me and say they don't work. But when they broke and I got my new truck and I didn't buy new ones, a deer ran into the side of my truck, and I never had a vehicle accident with a deer. So I like the deer whistles.
So I don't know if you talked to Marty Shea, they're also looking at this infrared capability that tells you where there's deer hotspots, and that's where that term came up. I'm not the expert, but the point is there were a lot of things that are undertaken. What would you recommend in addition to your effort that would complement what you're doing to help reduce the deer population or to protect people from vehicle collisions?
I mean, we discussed, I helped develop Southampton Town's deer management program on the pro hunting side, as well as being open-minded to listening to other methods of reducing deer. I'm not a scientist, but I'm out in the field doing the work. So we did talk about painting symbols in the roadway, which we could work with the police department, and we could say which are the hot spots that we have where we have the most vehicle deer strikes. So that's something that the village can do to be proactive, to educate people, say, hey, this is a bad corner, John Street now. Deer getting hit over here. So we could put signs, or we can paint something in the road. Hot spots, I'm just not feeling that.
It's one giant hotspot.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to push deer into areas, and the bottom line is they want to find food. So they might be in that hot spot, which is a bedding area, but that doesn't mean that they're not going into the yards to eat. They're eating in the yards. Why? Because we put $100,000 a year in plants in our yards, and we don't put $100,000 a year in plants in the CPF properties. And, that's a fact. They hit those bird feeders. I've worked on a property in this village, several properties in the past. One of the tasks that this village will have is the only law that you have is that you didn't adopt the discharge changes in 2014 that the DEC set forth. So you don't have a no hunting ban in the village. You have 57-1 local law, which says that firearms has a 500-foot setback as well as bows. So the only thing that this board would have to do would be to adopt the DEC's law or make changes to 57-1 saying that we will be current with the DEC's regulations of a 500-foot setback for firearms, 250-foot setback for crossbows, although you cannot hunt crossbows in Suffolk County or Westchester unless it's on a deer damage permit, which is called a nuisance permit, a DDP, and a 150-foot setback for bows. So once you just do that through a resolution, and again, that would be Wayne's job. I think,
He's nodding his head,
I
so.
think that's the way to do it, I'm pretty sure.
Do salt licks, which attract cows and things like that, do you ever use something like that to attract them to a spot where you're going to get good shots and not be putting it through somebody's
Now we're
plate
talking
glass
about
window?
DMAPs, Deer Management Area Permits. With the DDP, you can bait. You can only use corn, whole, clean corn, and vegetable and fruit matter. Salt does work excellent in June and July, but it's illegal. I can't even use it. A DMAP would be a great program. North Haven kind of ran a DMAP. They would get extra permits, doe tags, and they would hand them out to the hunters as they were successful. What we did with Southampton Town was I worked with the Southampton clerk, Sunday Schremeyer, and we had DEC give them stacks of permits in the Hampton Bays office as well as the office down the road. And when a hunter was successful, he can bring his tags in, show them that he filled them out, and they would issue him 2 new bonus tags right away. Again, hunters can only take $2 a season. So they can have up to 4 tags in their possession if they don't apply for a doe tag for upstate, and they just did it here. They'd start out with 2. After November 1st, they'd have 4. And every time they shoot a deer, they can turn them in. You can consign doe tags from one hunter to another twice, which is ridiculous. You should be able to consign them as many times as possible. But DEC manages hunting as a recreational program. They don't manage hunting as a management program. And that's one of the problems that we have. We do not have crossbows, which would be very effective because it put more people in the woods. But a lot of bow hunting elitists are against crossbows because it would put more hunters in the woods. And they like having their own space. And, you know, when you're on Long Island and you have properties that are $500,000 just for, you know, a half acre, it's different than upstate hunting. You know, it's more territorial. And those are things that you deal with. The 4 cornerstones of management, of deer management, through QDM practices, are habitat management, deer monitoring, and hunter management. Hunter management is the hardest part to deal with. And then when you couple it with an overpopulation issue and property owners with certain restrictions as well, you know, because you can't compel a property owner to do anything. It's their program. They dictate how it's run. And back to the salt lick, North Haven had a program where you were allowed to bait year-round. I don't know how they had that at the time, but I think that was prior to the DEC stripping away deer damage permits during the regular season. Now you can only have deer damage permits when there isn't a hunting season. So that's February 1st to September 30th. And we were allowed to bait because in the front yard, like you suggested, the pool's in the backyard and the cover's on. So we don't need a deer falling and landing on the cover and expiring on a cover. So a property owner would say, I'd rather you shoot from the garage second-story window and we'll have a bait pile in the front. So bait piles do work. Again, the DEC doesn't like baiting. It's illegal during the regular hunting season because they worry about chronic wasting disease. But yet they allow a 4-poster program that Shelter Island participated in, which applies permethrin to deer on their necks when the deer go to this feeding station of whole kernel corn, which costs $5,000 a year to maintain, and other animals get into it, like rats, white-footed mice, raccoons, possums. Back to another animal that can carry ticks. There's a study about red robins, the American red robins, that bring ticks further distances as well. So possums eat ticks. Now, if we had coyotes and wolves, we'd still be in the same boat. Don't believe the myth that if we had predators, natural predators, we wouldn't have a problem because you know what? They'd eat all the feral cats. They wouldn't eat the fawns. They wouldn't, you know, right now they're doing a Rocky Mountain wolf program out west supporting the introduction of wolves, but it's not to reduce elk and deer populations. It's to combat chronic wasting disease.
What is that?
the
I'm sorry,
weak
what is
around.
chronic wasting disease?
It's basically a disease that comes from feeding at the same area, like a trough, and saliva's getting crossed, and then it goes to their brain, and they die. Then there's blue tongue disease, there's HD. I mean, there's diseases that these animals carry, and, you know, eventually, everybody wants to come to the Hamptons for our beaches. Everyone wants to go to the North Fork for the wineries. So if you had to put out a statement that said, "Deal with a public health crisis," because Suffolk County created their own tick committee. So when we're starting to pay attention to ticks and property owners complaining, we need to start developing a deer management program. And every municipality, every hamlet, and every property owner can have this. And like I said, I run this program, and it's free to my property owners. Property owners don't pay anything. If they want to buy us a tree stand or they want to donate to our 501c3 and they're happy with us, they could do that.
So where do you get your funding from? Outside of those donations?
Most of the hunters pay to be in a private organization that I have, which manages hunters for deer. So the money that they pay covers the cost of us doing business. Like right now, we have a 7-acre horse farm. We're looking to move into Spionk in December. So we don't get free rent. And it's funny because I say to the town all the time, you're giving properties away to all these nonprofits for oysters and clams, and, you know, here I am doing God's work, removing deer, and I don't have a property for free. But we you know, the benefit to my hunters is access. They want to be in, to be in a deer-rich area.
I think you said,
Why don't you tell everyone here how you pick your hunters? Because I think that's an important thing, because they want to know who's on their property.
Yeah. We learned this pretty quick, and it was Joe Gagella from the Farm Bureau, and he came out with this crazy story about Hunter shooting his grandfather's sprinkler lines on the farm. And I think when most people think of a hunter, they think of some Italian guy with a Cadillac with the deer on the front with a pepperoni stick in his back pocket. I go to my properties like this. You know, I'm hunting now, and I have my truck set up a certain way, and I get to the property, and I put my clothes on in a car, I go to the tree stand, I take the deer, I get undressed, I put regular clothes on, and I recover it. I actually have a dicky suit that's green, that's sprayed with permethrin, so I don't get ticks on me during the warmer months, and I recover that animal, I put it in a sled, and I drag it to my truck, I load it in my truck, and I leave. So we're there to be like the landscaper, high by. I'm not there to encroach on the property owner. So originally how we started picking hunters was we were doing this course at Thrill of the Hunt. It was a 3D archery range, and we were just picking the best of the best. Then we went with like a bunch of police officers and military personnel, because we figured, hey, if they can pass the psychological for that, they're good to go. Then there's some people that just don't get it and don't want to follow directions. So we kind of stiffened it up a little bit, and we do a criminal background check on our hunters. Because what happens is people that like hunting, maybe gun hunting, and no longer can have a firearm or vote because they've been arrested for a felony, they now get into bow hunting because they can have a bow. So we do a criminal background check on our hunters. I also vet them, and I put them through our own bow hunting in sensitive environments course, which is specified to residential hunting. We don't take 40-yard shots. We don't hunt out of ground blinds. We're always elevated. The back stops the ground. Those are important. To note, for everybody in this room, there has never been a second-party bow hunting incident in Suffolk County. So your children, your Shih Tzu is not going to get shot by a bow hunter. For a bow hunter to take a deer, he has to take a specific shot targeting both lungs, broadside or quarter and away at 20 yards. He's elevated, the deer's over here. If your son can get in between that hunter and that deer and get hit by that arrow, when he recovers, sign him up for the track team, the Olympic track team. because he would have to be Flash Gordon to get there. The same with a dog. We're not shooting dogs, we're not shooting cats, we're not shooting possums, we're not shooting other animals on the property. We're there to remove deer and to make your life a little bit easier. The best part of the program is it's October 1st to January 31st. You can say, we're here, we like our Indian summers, come in November. So November to January 31st. It's really up to the property owner. Some property owners say no weekend hunting at my house. Weekdays are better. We don't hunt on holidays. We try to cause as little conflict in the community as possible. It's very important to have people work together than work against each other. So we try to do the right thing. If someone called me and had a complaint about one of the hunters, I know what property they're on and when they hunted it, who it was, because I have a digital sheet that they sign up for that property. So I keep that access. And as I explained to the mayor, if someone had a complaint, I would go and check it out. I have a bunch of guys in my organization that are also nuisance wildlife control operators. We've had calls in the past in Remsenburg where someone said, listen, I'm not mad at you. One of your hunters forgot his deer. It's on my front lawn. And I said, I'll be right there. And I go there, and it was hit by a car. But I was able to remove that animal because I have a nuisance wildlife control license. It was great when I'd be able to go to Jackson Avenue and just dump it over on the town's property, but they stopped me from being able to dump any carcasses. So I asked the town why they did that, what their philosophy was, and they said, well, we just don't want the deer over there. So where does highway bring them? Well, they bring them to the highway area. Well, then can I bring my deer there too? No. So, fact is, this is the King's deer. This is New York State's deer. This isn't Southampton Village's deer. This isn't Old Fields deer. This isn't Quogg's deer. It's the state's problem, really. And, you know, we created a program out of necessity. Back to Joe Gagella. He made me realize that people had such a bad feeling, emotion, whatever, maybe an experience in the past, about hunters, that I wanted to create something where you can feel comfortable with the person that's on your property. And instead of having to approach that person, you can call me. Because that's another issue. You don't want to approach the guy that left the Kit Kat wrapper on the floor. You want to say, hey, Mike, that last guy, I don't want him on the property no more. He left a Kit Kat wrapper on the floor. And then I'd say, okay. And I'd call him up. You can't hunt there. Next time you do something wrong, you're out of the program. It was funny because I talked to one of the trustees, I won't mention any names, and she said that, you know, they would want to talk to as many people as possible, especially, you know, my competition. I said, I don't have competition. And I wasn't saying it to be cocky. What I was saying is that my competition, the guys that I threw out of my organization because they couldn't follow rules. And what they did was they took all my stuff from my website and they took all my stuff from my literature, they put their logo on it and they mail it out to houses and they say they do what I do. Let me tell you something, there's nobody that does what I do, and I run a tight ship. It's a dictatorship. That's the type of ship it is. Because I'm here to make the property owners happy, and I do it because these guys get access, and I'm also doing what I like doing, that's conservation. And I think that's important, because if we didn't do it, the USDA would be here, and they would kill all the deer. And I like being able to see them, and I want my children to see them, and I like seeing turkeys on my property, and I think a lot of other people like seeing wildlife too. It's just when it's too many of them, that's when they start having a change of heart. So,
Well, we certainly appreciate all your comments, Mike.
thank you.
And actually, if you have any cards or brochures, if you could leave them on the table
Okay.
here for
Yeah, I will.
people to pick up, that would be great.
I will. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right,
So
thank you.
we will be back in touch.
I look forward to it.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
all right, thank you.
Yep. Yes. Yes, you have to come up to the mic.
but a couple of questions. One is, nature avoids a vacuum. How are you going to keep them from coming, once you cull the herds here, from points east of north and south? Doesn't that attract others? No? The other thing is that depending on property owners alone, I'll give you permission right now to go across the street where there's a property that has a whole convention of them. I think you also need a blanket permission from the trustees, because I see herds of them in the dunes, near Dune Beach and in the wetlands. Now, how do you get an owner's permission there? In other words, it can't be dependent on that alone. And I think anything that gets rid of some of them, but it's not a permanent, not a long-term, and not a complete solution. Just another approach.
I think, and Mike will agree with me because we've had this discussion, the two of us often, is the intent is not to get rid of all the deer. The intent is to reduce them down to a manageable amount.
Mike, does that mean that instead of eating the geranium in both of my planters, they're going to eat just one of the planters?
They may eat just one geranium, yes.
All right. Okay.
Also, you have to address her point of them coming from other areas.
Right, they're not coming from other areas because they'd get hit by cars and they would probably die from that, but some will make it through. It's the potential that anything's going to happen. But there is not a 911 call that the deer are calling for the South Haven Village deer are calling the North Haven deer and be like, it's all clear over here. There's less competition for food. So that you don't have to worry about. What you can do for your plants, and there are other, and I passed over it because I do have ADHD, so I jump from back to front to sideways, but I always come to the conclusion of what I was going to say. There are other mitigation methods that can be used by property owners. I have a property owner that's a landscape designer, and she uses bird netting around some of her plants. There is an alternative to fencing a whole property. Maybe do raised beds and fence the raised beds where you have a garden that you're looking to grow. So there are, and I have other clients that spray bitters. All of these things cost money, and bitters last until it rains.
Does a raised bed have to be 8 feet high?
No, but you can have a raised bed with 8 feet high fencing around it, with the top.
Well, I will tell you, my wife buys coyote urine by the gallons.
Doesn't work.
And I keep telling her it's not going to work. There's not a deer in Southampton that's ever smelled a coyote.
Yeah, no, it's funny. One of the property owners I met, she brought me to a house, and she's still with us today. She comes to our Christmas party every year. And she was telling us about a property, and she said, I just want you to do whatever you want, whatever you can. I just want, they're just such a nuisance in my life. And back to what you said, we're not looking to eviscerate the species. We're just looking to reduce them where they're coming into conflict with people. So if there's a preserved property and they're not causing a conflict, then that's that. If it's a CPF property, we can hunt in that property. We can work something out. But as I was talking to her, I saw these like steak knives on the ground, and I said, oh, you got a bunch of steak knives here. She says, yeah, that's what I throw at the deer to, get them off the crop.
But I also remember you saying that when you have really good deer management, right now we're really seeing a lot of them, and when you have really good deer management, you won't see them at all.
No.
And that's because you said they're coming out to eat everywhere because there's not enough food because there's so many of them. But when you have a successful management program, they won't be coming out.
Right. Deer are crepuscular, so what you're going to do is you're going to see them move early morning and then sunset. That's when they're most active. During the middle of the day, they're going to bed down. Most people see them when they're leaving to go to work, and that's when they're shooing them out. I have this one property in Lloyd Harbor, and the wife is just beside herself because they spend $40,000 a year in plants. She loves her gardening, and the husband leaves the house every day at like 6:30, and it's just when the deer start crossing into the yard, and I'm there. So he warms his car up prior to that. So I text him. I'm like, I see the deer, they're making their way over here. It can't be successful if you're going to be running your car, you know? So the wife says, catches me on our way out. So we're usually leave by 9, 10 o'clock. She says if he runs his car again, that's going to be the last time that car is going to be in the driveway.
That's great. Thank you, Mike. And we'll certainly be in touch and see if we can organize something.
Right.
Is there any questions from, yes?
I'm an avid sportsman, and Trevor Pico, 90 South Main Street. I'm an avid sportsman, and I study wildlife and deer management, stuff like that. I hunt a lot in management zones where you have to shoot a doe before you can even get a buck. But my question is that even with rifles, I've seen deer travel 600-700 yards after they've been shot. So what happens if you try to drop it in my yard and it hops over the neighbors and they don't give you any permission to go on there? What do you do for that? Because then you have a dead deer in someone's yard who didn't want to have anything to do with the whole program. Yep. And that's not a good look for sportsmen everywhere, especially when we have Humane Society for America breathing down our backs of our necks. It's tough to have those situations. So what do you kind of do in that scenario?
That's, again, it goes back to what I said. I cannot compel a property owner to give me access to recover a deer. If a deer does go on that property and that property is not posted and that property owner is not home when I knock on the door to ask for permission, I can remove that deer. Back to our consent forms, that's why we're going to keep a log of properties that say, we don't want hunting, but if a deer does go on my property, you can recover it. There was an incident in Eaton's Neck where a property owner didn't want the hunter to recover his deer. That deer was actually within the high tide watermark, so he had every right to take it. He didn't. A lot of hunters think that they can call the DEC and the DEC will get that deer for them. Again, the DEC cannot compel a property owner to give you consent to recover that deer. So instead of allowing that deer to be given to the hunter so that he could provide that meat to his family, that property owner chose to pose with that deer for 4 days on her lawn for all the newspapers and all of our animal activist friends. As far as HSUS, I get that a lot. You know what's very interesting about HSUS, which is the Humane Society of the United States? They love to talk about PZP, protozoan, whatever it is. It's a pig ovary that sterilizes deer through inoculation. You know why I like talking about the villages using sterilization programs through inoculation using PZP? Because they own the patent to it. So, you know, like this young man said, it doesn't look good seeing a deer lying on the road and you can't get to it or it's on a property. You know what else doesn't look good? Is when you see an arrow in a deer from guys that are not good hunters and choose to drive around and shoot them out of their cars, and that deer has an arrow in it. All of my hunters put their back tag on their arrows. And the reason why we do that is so that we show another level of accountability in my program, which basically says if that arrow is sticking in a deer, any deer that we see that has an arrow in it, we always make it a point to take that deer out. And the reason for it is what it's going to look like to the general public. But accountability is very important, and you know, it's a great question because you know that's why we take 20-yard shots, so that a deer doesn't go 400 yards. And that's why my hunters go through a course that I give that explains to them, depending on how they shot, what their arrow looks like, when they can actually get out of a tree stand. Again, I don't run a recreational hunting program where I have a camera on myself doing selfies and I'm hunting, and then after I shoot the deer, I'm yelling, yeah, I just did it, I did. I'm in there to be a professional. And I'm there to take a deer out as quickly and cleanly as possible, double lung shot. I'm not there to showboat. I'm not there to cause conflict. I'm there to be successful. I'm not taking a 40-yard shot where I might hit one lung and that deer can go 60 yards, 80 yards. That's why what we're going to do is we're going to create a program where we have enough distance between our property owners that we're going to be able to get access to remove those animals from the property.
There are a lot of deer that have been hit by cars that you see on the side of the road, too. So.
Yeah, and you see that a lot in October and November when bucks are chasing does. And you see it now when fawns are trying to follow their mothers. So there's times of the year we just got to educate everybody. And again, you're not going to educate everybody. You can't. You can't force someone to be educated or pay attention or go to a website. You know, I guess everyone's going to learn when they hit one. So, I hit one last year, same time. Maybe I'll drive slower next time.
Well, another thing coincidentally, or incidentally, as you point out, the two most active times of the day are morning
Yes.
and the end of the day when people are commuting to and
Yeah.
from work. So,
Right.
I mean, just do the math.
Just like any species. I mean, if you study the species long enough, and you know if it's a diurnal species or a crepuscular, I mean, you know, you're going to figure out real quick what you're dealing with, you know? So,
I'll just tell you real quickly, Mike, we had one of the people that are on one of the boards told me the other day, he was walking down his driveway in the morning to meet somebody at the end of the road, and he hears a sneeze, and he goes, God, my neighbor's up already? He turned around and went, Gesundheit, and he looked, and it was a deer standing there staring at him. So, you know, they are rather prevalent. But thank you. Any other?
One more question.
Sure.
Good evening, Katerina from Tumilatum on behalf of Whitefield Condominium. Just want to thank you for the presentation and a sense of humor, and on behalf of the board express the support for the controlled hunting actually. But my question is whether the villages which implemented the controlled hunting, have they also enacted a law with respect to 8-foot fencing, or did they eliminate that completely? Because my understanding is that comprehensive approach is supported, if I understand correctly. So would the village consider still enacting the law in conjunction with the controlled hunting, and how did other villages handle that, if you happen to know?
Well, I don't know how the other villages handled it, but when we started to look at the fencing, I personally felt that wasn't the sole item that we needed to control the situation. And I strongly felt that it was hunting, and we also looked at other forms of birth control and so forth. But the problem, and Mike had mentioned it, the issue that I always have with that is it's non-selective, and other species end up getting involved in that, and I'd rather see a very selective, professional way of dealing with the situation.
The osprey.
Right, but it's just a point, but shorter fences, they do definitely impact the smaller wildlife and the way they migrate.
So since you represent Whitefield, would Whitefield consider having the hunters on their
I would
property?
have to speak with the board, but I'm pretty sure a lot of board members.
It would be in the fall.
Right, they express support for controlled hunting, so I can't speak at this moment for them, but my expectation is that yes.
I mean, I think with Whitefield, because I've given this a lot of thought, Whitefield, if you put up 8-foot fences in Whitefield and tried to eliminate the deer on the property, they can come through the front. I mean, there are no gates in the front. You have a drive that goes completely around, so you enter this way and you enter that way, and there's really no controlling them to come in that way.
They really would like to have a gate, and they kind of withheld from proposing or applying for anything because of the proposed law, and to see where that's going to go.
But it's also hard for you to have a gate because you have people entering one of the busiest streets, trying to get in. What if there's more than one? Trying to go in at the same time. It's really a difficult place to have a gate that opens and closes to allow people to enter into a condominium unit, like you have a lot of units there.
Right.
So that would be very difficult. So the point is, we'd really like to thin the herd, see how it works, and then see what happens with that.
Thank you. I just want to state the position clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, do you want to open the public hearing on the deer fence law?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think- yeah.
Segue into that.
Go ahead.
And real quick, I do not support fences at all because it does hinder other wildlife. It's a danger to younger animals, it's a danger to birds, it's a danger to turtles. I don't support fences.
But have the other municipalities you worked in, have they done that at the same time to,
No.
are you aware of?
Nope. No. I think that the allure of living on the East End is that we have our vistas. I think that if we do a hunting program, I think this village will see success and relief in one season, enough to where we can try it a second year, and then you can always revisit the fence issue. Fences also push the deer into the roadway, which I thought I beat up a little bit. So if you have a big area that puts a big fence around that property, you're passing that burden on to that neighbor. And then they're going to have to get a fence. And then eventually every property is going to need a fence. And then you're going to push all the deer into the roadways, and then you're going to probably have to hire TCOs just to deal with the deer in the roadway more than the visitors. So.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Ellen?
The shooting season coincides. The shooting season seems to coincide with the time when none of the second homeowners are here.
Correct.
And that is a huge problem. I think there has to be some village intervention, about this.
Well, the decision can be made while they're here, but nothing can be done until they leave.
Well, I think
They
a
may
lot
not
of
wanna
people
be
would
here
hesitate
anyway.
to have people on their property when they're not around.
Well, there's,
Who knows, but it's a problem.
right, Mike has a very strict and specific way of identifying the
okay.
people who are hunting with everything from car tags to,
I'm not objecting. I'd like to send them across the street is
no,
all.
I'm just clarifying it.
My place is safe. Good night, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
If you're all not aware, the highway department is picking up deer every single day in the village that have been hit, and 3 or 4 deer a day can be common.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize that.
Okay, and sometimes these deer are not dead. They're sitting there suffering. So it is a very common occurrence.
Thank you, Gary.
Well, moving ahead quickly, since it seems to be a deer night. On public hearings, the first item of public hearing, we have a deer fence, and I'm making a motion to open the public hearing on the deer fence law.
Second?
Second. In favor?
Aye.
And is there any comments from the trustees on fencing?
My only thought is, are we going to continue to keep this local law hearing open and then make decisions as to when and if we want to do this? And listen to the public on how, because we have a lot of people who've come here who want the 8-foot fence, and yet we're having an expert tell us that the 8-foot fence, he doesn't agree with it for a lot of different reasons. So I don't know where we're going with this.
Well, where we're going is that a lot of people feel that the fence is imperative for them to controlling their vegetation, and there's probably some people who have fencing that don't want to hunt deer. So we need to take a look at our fence law, because there's a lot of fences that are pre-existing that people have put in. And I'd hate to see the village continue to put in these fences that aren't under some kind of control. So is there any comment from the public on deer fence? Yes.
You know the rule.
It's Christine Whitaker. I live on Cameron Street. I looked at the beginning of this, and it looked like, what do people do if they have less than 20,000 square feet and they want a rear fence? Because this seems to be it says on lots exceeding 20,000 square feet. And the second thing was that this, just mentioning the bow and arrow, is that what do you do where, like Pine Street School, they're there all the time at twilight and at 2 in the morning, and cemetery, and where the open spaces are is where they're drawn to when it's quiet. So then how do you get the school's permission to do bow hunting?
Well, you wouldn't get the school's permission, but there is a cemetery there. You might be able to get permission from the town.
Right, but like the Pine Street School, that's where they are.
All those little deer running around the school.
But the size of the property is, what happens if somebody's on less than 20,000?
That hasn't really been,
Combine.
that hasn't been discussed yet.
alternative.
That was a proposition or recommendation, but it hasn't been decided on. Yes, that's what part of the hearing is about.
Anybody else?
Trevor Pico, 90 South Main Street again. I'm concerned that allowing 8-foot deer fencing in the village will create a larger deer issue, create an unsightly aesthetic, and will also prevent the natural migrations of other East End wildlife. Putting up high fences will force more deer onto the roads, creating more possibilities for collisions and liabilities. East Hampton Village has a good database of deer collision sites and times. There have been more hits in areas with high fencing. More time should be given to allow a state deer biologist for Zone 1 who can look at the ecological impact of high fencing might have and to see if it may help with our deer problem. Essentially, putting up high fencing is just kicking the can down the road. It's not preventing anything from breeding or eating. It's just making it your neighbor's problem instead of your problem. It is important. Yeah, and it also becomes a cost, it also becomes a money issue. Even looking here, an application fee of $500, that's not cheap. Putting up these deer fences is very expensive, so it pretty much just goes down to large commercial properties that have the money to put up these fencing, can put them up, and it leaves the rest of us with twice as many deer in our yards. So there's some major issues, and I think probably the most important thing would be contacting, as the gentleman over here was saying, these aren't our deer, these are the state's deer, and so we should have the state wildlife biologist, the state deer biologist for our zone come in, and she's more than happy to conduct a study, and she's already not a fan of the fencing from what she's seen, but she can show the other ecological impact, because it's not just deer that we share our space with lots of other animals. And you know, I've been out here looking at those animals my whole life, and I'd like to continue to be able to see the red foxes run through my yard, right in the village on South Main Street. And that won't be the case if everybody is putting up large fencing everywhere. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. You know, I think part of the discussion going forward on fencing, or certainly if we're going to consider a program of culling, is, as Michael pointed out, our current law doesn't allow it because we have the 500-foot setback for discharge of any form of weapon, firearm or bow, and it's been changed to 150. So that's, I think that needs, if we're going to somehow incorporate it into whatever we're going to discuss, that it shouldn't be, because if we, what I don't want to see is if we decide to go along with this and we listen to his presentation again and again and again, and then we say, okay, and then we have to, I'd like this, if we're going to, I think
We have to move along with
yes,
that.
that has to be part of the discussion, hand in hand with it.
No, you're right. Any other comment? Any comment from the board? I'll just share with you that on my way home, I called you.
Right.
I think it was
Good, yeah.
a day or two ago, I can't remember. I go by a deer fence that was next to a farm in the North Fork, and there's 2 police officers there trying to get the most irate, nasty-looking osprey out of the deer fence. So,
Oh, God.
you know, those are things to consider. We sometimes, you know, so often in animal control, and you and I have spoken often about it, we jump to conclusions that things like fences are great, but we don't look at what the actual impact of them are from controlling snapping turtle migrations for laying their eggs, to rabbits, to possums, to raccoons, to a number of species, foxes that we have in the community, and we just solely look at the deer. So I personally think that fence is one alternative. I have, I'm probably one of the last people in the village of Southampton to do it, but I have, back in my yard is all a garden, and about 3 weeks ago I came back and Gary, who was right there, had given me some great tomato plants, and I had these lovely tomatoes there, and every single one, they took one bite out of them. They didn't eat the whole tomato, but you could see the teeth marks, and each one picked off and lying on the ground. So I put up a fence right around the garden, and it did stop them from going in. They don't like to get into a small space and get stuck in there. So that was a big help. So I think there are other things that we can do. That's not to say that a fence isn't one of them. It's just that we need to take a close look at it. So if there's no further comment about fences, I'd make a motion to keep the deer fence law open until...
Michael, I would suggest that you need additional time to consider everything you heard tonight and look further into this. The town of Southampton obviously adopted their management plan. Sounds like Michael was part of that, and certainly there's options there. Looking at the provisions of Chapter 57, if you want to have consistency, you want to have that as a proposal. My suggestion is perhaps at least 1 month, if not a little longer, for you to just keep this available and on your docket while these other matters can be reviewed.
Yep. No, I agree.
So
if we do that a month from...
The August 21st.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to adjourn the deer fence law until August 21st.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Next public hearing we have is parking restrictions. So I make a motion to open the hearing
it's on Breeze Lane.
on Breeze Lane, parking restrictions on Breeze Lane.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Comments from the board?
Once again, is anybody here from Breeze Lane or any of the neighbors who are interested in this particular? I know the bulk of you people from Layton Avenue and Hildreth and so forth.
There's nobody here, Michael.
So, Michael, at the last meeting, the board asked a question, was brought up as to what the state law actually provides. The state law, the vehicle and traffic law, which can be a ticket written by our police officers, not our code enforcement, and it results in any fines, a good portion of which would be given to the state. As opposed to writing a section in your vehicle and traffic law where all the fines would go to the village. But the state law provides that you cannot park, first of all, within front of a public or private driveway, which is also in our statute currently, and within 20 feet of a crosswalk at an intersection, and within 30 feet of an approach to a stop sign or a yield sign or a traffic control signal. And there is no overall provision of 20 feet of within an intersection unless there's a crosswalk there, and many of our streets don't have the crosswalks. So if you were going to regulate, the question would be the distance, what's appropriate given the intersection, if you're dealing with that. And one of the comments that we heard, we had picked 50 feet initially based on the understanding that our zoning code had a triangular provision for height of hedges and everything else at intersections. And it was my belief that was 50 feet, and actually further research shows that's only 20 feet. So one of the suggestions here is that if you're going to mirror that kind of situation, at least for safety purposes, at least 20 feet, or some number, depending on the circumstances of that particular intersection. So that's one suggestion as to an amendment here.
So you're saying the state barring, and let's take it just an intersection, barring the absence, if there is no crosswalk or no sign or traffic light, then the state has no provision for how far back parking should be?
The statute doesn't, it just says within 20 feet of a crosswalk at an intersection unless a different distance is indicated by official signs, marking, or parking meters, which would have to be adopted by local law.
Local law necessarily.
So
But the
I
state
have a
has nothing
question.
less.
How does the state define a crosswalk? Because
That's a
if
good
you-
question. I can't tell you exactly,
if
but
you
it's
have
got to be
Breeze Lane,
something that's marked by
Yeah.
official signs and
Yeah, but-
markings on the street.
Yeah, but come on, if you have Fordham Road that goes into Breeze Lane, and you want to cross Fordham Road, to me, that's a crosswalk. If we have to go, because you have to cross the street, so if we have to go and mark every single one of them, that's ridiculous. I'd like to know how
If
they
you
define
wanted to
it.
utilize that section of the state law for enforcement purposes, or
That's
you
what
could
you would
use your own village code in place as you're proposing the distance within the intersection without the need to be in a crosswalk or otherwise, just the plain 20 feet from the intersection.
Okay, that's fine.
The reason he pointed out is because some people have brought up the 20-foot number, and as that our council dug into it and found, yes, that is true. However, those parameters have to be met first. We can do it on our own with, of course, the proper signage indicating whatever we put in place. It's an arbitrary number. It could be 5 feet, 10 feet, it's whatever we really decide upon as an argument's point.
It's based on the safety standards that you would
Right.
normally apply. The state usually utilizes at least 20 feet. Your corner clearance provisions are 20 feet. If there's a particular intersection because of its shape or design or the activities that are nearby, the topography or otherwise, you could always consider a greater distance.
Right.
But the reason why this was brought to us is because people felt the cars were parked so close to the crosswalk, to the street, that no one
Particular
could...
Fordham Road is a narrow right-of-way, narrow pavement, and being able to maneuver in and out if cars are parked that close to the intersection is a concern. That was what raised it. That was the issues that were raised. So.
And if we were to adopt that village-wide, we wouldn't need a sign.
Well, this proposal is only specific to those intersections.
Yeah.
If you want to go and do a general provision, we could consider that for all intersections as well.
I haven't thought or
But you
studied
need
that.
signage.
Oh, you do need
you would still
signage.
need-
Okay,
yes,
so
you would
we
still
would
need
need
signage.
signs then to the north and the south, 20 feet from Fordham.
Yeah, and we have signage in other
Yeah.
places that say no parking from this point to the corner.
Yeah.
It's a lot of signs.
Aware of that.
We'll leave that open for consideration.
Okay.
So I make a motion to adjourn that to, and you told me what, Steve, the next,
August 9th,
no, the next meeting.
21st?
20, no, the August 9th meeting.
August 9th?
Yeah.
August 9th.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And on another public hearing, we have the ethics code revisions. So I make a motion to open the ethics code revisions.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
This is a revision of the code that we just,
Yes, yeah.
so what is this revision?
The council can point out what the revision is on the ethics code.
There's been no change to the proposal since the last public hearing. I did communicate with Steve Leventhal, who was here to present. He was responsible for several meetings with the board, the ethics board, and providing you with this proposal. And we did go with a fine-tooth comb to make sure we dotted all our i's and didn't all the typos. The proposal, no changes. You had no comments. As far as I know, no written comments as well have been received. There's no further comments, I've also provided you with a notice of adoption for your consideration.
Is there any comments from the public? Barbara?
Hello. Misstate my name, address. Barbara Wilson. Hello. I don't have any organizations. And for the record, I will give P.O. Box 745, Southampton, New York. I just have something from the criminal procedure law 53011. With considering orders of protection, it defines how parties are related, and I think the board might just want to consider that for what they are defining as a relative. So I would hand it to Mr. Bruin, and I have a copy for each for your consideration. Oh, sorry, not to Mr. Bruin. Mr. Funch. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Barbara?
Okay. Does this affect?
So what's the, ethics is the criminal procedure law is obviously dealing with a lot of relationships that are perhaps arise to a level of enforceability of orders of protection, as the judge indicated. The ethics code is not to the same level. The definition of relative is modeled after what's in the state law. It's modeled after what your current code of ethics are. I think here is asking that you expand that definition to persons who are formally married to another one. Probably doesn't arise to the level, that's one of the elements in the criminal procedure law, doesn't arise to the level of what a conflict of interest would arise with an ex-spouse under the state law, nor what I think you would be aiming to do under your village code of ethics. Persons also residing together, having some sort of intimate relationship, also probably is not something that you can arise to the same level as well. Otherwise, the other elements of that are incorporated in your definition.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Well, I certainly would like to personally move ahead with the ethics code and put it up to vote. I don't know how the rest of the trustees feel.
Go for it. The first thing you would have to do, Michael, is close the public hearing.
Right. So I would make a motion to close the public hearing on the ethics code revisions.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I would like to make a motion to adopt the ethics code.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Trustee Yaz?
Aye.
Trustee Allen?
Aye.
Mayor Irving?
Aye.
Trustee McCann?
Aye.
Trustee Hatcher?
Aye.
Thank you. It's great.
In that regard, I just want to follow up is that also Mr. Leventhal had advised that there was 3 steps to a proper ethics code for the village. One was the consideration and amendment of your law to bring it up to date. The second would be because an ethics law is there to guide our employees and officers, that we provide an easy, manageable way, such as a pamphlet or a booklet. And thirdly is training. And since it is a new law, you would want to have training at least 1 or 2 hours for our employees and officers. And so I asked Mr. Leventhal to provide you with proposals, and I believe that was forwarded to you, and you can consider that as the next step on this. Yes.
I think actually the next step is a pamphlet for
Right, both of them.
employees.
Plain
Actually, you want to do
English.
both.
There's
The
actually,
plain English.
in your book, the last page in the
Yeah.
executive session is actually that proposal.
Okay, great. Good. It's nice to move ahead. Continuing on public hearings, we have
Stop calling me names.
parking restrictions on Hilder Street and Jennings Avenue. So I'll make a motion to open the hearing on the parking restrictions on Hilder Street and Jennings Avenue.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there,
Michael, just before you do that, I just want to remind everybody, and it was, we had received a lot of comments, but I just want to remind everybody that currently our code, there's a lot of questions raised as to Layton Avenue.
Right.
And currently, our code on the north side of Layton Avenue currently restricts parking between 12 and 6 a.m. We understand there may not be signs out there, and the Highway Department has been directed to put up the signage. But that is currently the code there. It also prohibits parking, no parking at all times between Main Street and Hildreth, and also no parking between 12 and 6 between Hildreth and Elm Street. So they're the current regulations on the book as far as Layton Avenue is concerned. The issue may be there's no
Hildreth and
signage.
Elm, they don't,
Could this be repeated?
yeah.
The north side of Layton is currently restricted between 12 and 6, and the south side of Layton between Hildreth and Elm Street is also currently restricted between 12 and 6, and then the south side of Layton between North Main Street and Hildreth is no parking at all times. They're the current regulations.
You say now signage is going up?
When we had the hearings and it was an indication that that signage wasn't there, that signage was directed to be put up.
I think the signs were there from Maple to Elm on the north side of Layton.
That's
But from Maple to North Main Street on the north side, there were no signs.
correct.
And at our last meeting, we had a discussion about the condos and the lack of parking for the condos. The condos had asked for 4 spots on Hildreth. Over there checking, we certainly have cleared the intersection or the crosswalk across Hildreth. We've cleared that with a setback. And then there, really very nicely, 4 cars can fit in there. It was suggested that we stripe that, which I thought was a great idea. What I'd like to see, if this is at all possible, is to have no parking on the north side of Layton and stripe an area on the south side in front of the Layton apartments or condos, and allow for a certain amount of parking beyond that. But again, recognizing, and I think part of the no parking on Layton Avenue after a certain hour, or no parking at all, was because we have night spots just around the corner, and a lot of people were parking on that street closest to Elm. But I'd like to work something out on that if we can, as far as making accommodations, now that we know that there really were no accommodations, or they were not, it was not well thought out at the time. But we have to do something about that. So I think we need to talk about how we're going to approach that and how we're going to create some additional parking for the condo and something that will work for the entire neighborhood. Because I do know that on Layton, especially from Maple to North Main Street, there have been issues where people are parking and then sometimes, they're kind of stuck, so they're a little over into the neighbor's driveway. And, if we can make proper accommodations with striping for these people, maybe we can accommodate them.
Well, Nancy, I was amazed when we went down there and you and I went down and looked at Hildreth and Jennings, and then looked at Layton Avenue, because it's obvious that area has changed and it's been neglected, and the parking that was in effect was never enforced, and as council found out when he started to look at the code. So maybe we need to incorporate Layton into the parking restrictions and redesign the whole thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that's what we need to do.
I mean, for whatever reason, how it ended up on the north side, because again, we've all come to the same conclusion. After speaking to several neighbors who live on Layton, not even in the condos, as a matter of fact, just who live in the residences, who are most impacted, because that's where all the curb cuts are. So somehow it ended up on the north side. But that's, again, it's a different thing than what we're here tonight discussing, but it does need to be put in front of the condos. I don't know if at the time people didn't want to see it in front of their condos. I don't know how it ended up that way. But one disturbing point you just brought up, Counselor, is that what has been there all along, midnight to 6, no parking. I'm going to go on a limb and say the reason that wasn't enforced is because they were residents of the condo, and it wouldn't have been really good to come out every morning and see a ticket on their window that they were parked illegally. I'll take a guess at that. But now that you can put the signage, but you're saying they're going to put the signage up, now that it has to be enforced. And I don't think where are we putting these people now that are now just been warned.
Well, I think your
they're gonna get a
highway
ticket.
superintendent will take whatever direction that this board gives, but I'm just advising you, that's what the statute is, and
Yes,
we're all surprised to know that was already on the books. And perhaps the signage wasn't there and there was no enforcement, but clearly it's something that I've heard from this board, and I think what you're asking for the community tonight is to give you ideas, perhaps to come to a solution that might work, as Nancy was just indicating. So
I've also heard now from some condo members that, and again, you bring up parking and zoning, two personal things I always say. And that's why I mentioned why it was never put in front of the condos. Maybe somewhere along the line, people didn't want to see the vehicles in their view, because I've heard some people, condo, and again, from the past, and that's why I know most people are members, so I'm kind of addressing it to you. Is there a problem with putting large trucks or large vehicles in the back parking lot? Somebody they had, I heard, I'm only regurgitating what I've heard from people, that some people are against having work vehicles and large vehicles in the back parking lot behind the condo, which is why they're on the street. Is there any?
Septic tanks back there.
I'm sorry?
Septic tanks back there.
let's take comments.
Okay, yeah, I mean, you will, actually, we're going to come up, but I'm addressing that now. I'm throwing it out there, because this is our job, is to hear the input from the people, and you will come up individually and address that. But as I said to a person last time from Hildreth, the Layton Avenue, the condos is a situation all in itself that we need to fix above and beyond whatever restrictions we do or do not enact on Hildreth. And that's, as Trustee McGann and the Mayor just said, part of it is moving, I think an easy solution, long overdue, is moving the parking from the north side. Everybody realize, with the current, that's the north side, and then right in front of the condos where the sidewalk is. Does anybody in the room have a problem with that? So that's all I wanted to answer, is that they come up, that's what I was presenting. Because that's what we're kind of presenting as an option here. So just so you know, amongst all the other things, does anybody have a problem? Now you had the nice open and sidewalk, and all those 14 or so vehicles on the other side of the street. We're proposing that they come on the south side of the street in front of your sidewalk and condo. And no parking on the other side.
No parking on the north side if parking is created on the south side. You can't have parking on both sides.
Okay?
It makes it too narrow.
Just make sure that's part of what we're proposing. This is just on the Layton Avenue. We're not even touching the Hildreths and Jennings. So that's...
Yes, you have to come up then.
Please.
Hi, down in Neanto, 25 Layton Avenue. The parking originally, years ago, was a reversal. My parents and people were having accidents because they were parking on that side of the street, which is why they reversed it and did it the opposite way, because when we were backing out, they were hitting cars, because cars don't always line against the curb. They're a foot, 2 feet out, and we were backing out sometimes, and
So you're
traffic's
coming out
coming.
of the driveway.
Yes, so they were having accidents, hitting the people on that side, which they switched it, they reversed it already. So that was already that way once, and it did not work out.
When that was? Anybody?
My mother would know.
Do you have any idea when they reversed that, Kat?
When it was when I was small, so I know it's been a while,
Okay,
but.
so 20, 30 years?
In other words, I've been there since 1949. Right? And then the apartment house or
You have to come up, you have to come up.
We can hear her.
We can hear.
We can hear her. Don't worry. She's going to live. Kath, you're right. Kath.
Charlie can't hear.
Well, no, they can hear her. That voice.
Okay, this is Catherine Poremba. I've been here since 1949, and like I said, naturally the condominium was not there at the time. It was one house and a nice big lot. But anyway, since the condominium came in stating that, as she had put earlier, they had parking on that side, and we had trouble backing out of our driveways, because again, like she stated, they weren't necessarily parked right next to the curb, et cetera, et cetera. So then we all got together and figured, all right, it would possibly be easier on the south side of the street. That worked until, because again, when the condominiums, or when the apartment house was made, people had one car, number one. And number two, there's not as many people, and they were all singles, et cetera. So, and they were gone for the day, worked, so consequently, everything was fine. But now, with the influx of the people, and the idea that a lot of people don't want to, there's a parking lot in the back, but they don't want to walk from the back because they have to go around to the front, because all the doors are on the south side, and so they want to park so they can just get out of their cars and go across the street, so and get into the condominiums. So consequently, at this stage of the game, it's a toss-up as to what to do here.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. I'm glad you mentioned that, because now, based on what you just said, that might not be a good solution, because we may be putting those cars back in the path of your cars backing out.
Yeah,
we run into that problem over
but
again.
again, I would like, Donna has it done very well. She's composed the whole thing here. Would you let her say her?
I just have some photographs, because I don't know if people here are even aware. It's not just some overhang. I had mailed this to the mayor in an email I had spoken to you about, and if I could just pass this around, or if they could even put it up so people could see it.
Let's put it right on the table, and then Charlie can do his magic.
My daughter was trying to go to work one morning. She worked for the town, and she went to go to work at 10 after 8, and I was 20 after 8, and this was our driveway. So here she is texting her boss, taking pictures, trying to explain why she can't go to work, because we're, again, blocked in. This is not overhang. We couldn't get out of our yard. I don't know anyone else in Southampton who can't leave when they want to. If there's an emergency, we have to go to the hospital, we have to call the police sometimes to get out of our yard. It's very inconsiderate. Like, people are not thinking. This woman, which was, I don't know who it was, but it was one of the end apartments. They don't do anything. We're out there. We're trying to figure out. We don't know who belongs to what. But when they see the police show up, they run out. All of a sudden, they don't want a ticket. They are watching from the windows, and they all of a sudden come out and say, and this woman said, "Oh, I was drunk last night," to the police officer. "I didn't realize that there was how I parked. I didn't realize there was a driveway there. I don't even remember parking this car." And I'm, oh my God, and that's the answer to a police officer. And this is the mentality we're dealing with. So it's very frustrating, because there's no consideration for us. I've lived on that street my whole entire life, 5 generations on that street, and we have kind of no rights, it seems like. And they don't get in trouble because they're going to move it, so they don't get a ticket.
So if we move it on the other side, they're not blocking your driveway. We're just going to have to be
I mean,
a little more careful
you have to be
on pulling out.
cognizant of now
The
having
problem
a...
is that our street is getting so high traffic with it's a connection street now, so there's parked cars constantly, and then there's 2 cars coming up and down, and you can't fit 3 cars down the street. So I witnessed, and then the other thing is about the no parking, and I didn't have a photograph because I was outside watering and I just didn't have my camera, but somebody from the apartment house on Saturday night, when I was watering, parked their car where it says no parking, signs right in front of them, turned it off, so the car was parked. They put their flashes on, but they proceeded to take, like, I could have carried, and I have a problem with my leg too, but I could have carried what they had in one shot, and I can understand if they're loading quickly. She took one thing and walked into the house, and not on the step or inside, put it into her house, came back. 15 minutes, the car was there, and I was ready to call somebody, and I just didn't have the fight in me to even bother at this point. But they're parking periodically when it says no parking. So that does not solve, they're not following rules. They're not following, I park there, I'm gonna get a ticket, but unfortunately, someone's gotta be a Gestapo and call every minute. And I had gone, when this happened to my daughter, I was livid and went to the police station, spoke to a sergeant, Village Hall, the property management, Morley, the mayor, everyone I could, and it was just, it's a really big, a problem that there's just no consideration for us. I mean, as far as 3 feet away on each side of the curb, so, and also I have numerous pictures here that are overhang. We're backing out, and there's a monster truck that has been parked there for 6 weeks that has not moved. They told the ordinance officer there's a warning on that truck. They did not take the warning off, and he told the ordinance officer they're gonna move it, and it's not being moved. That's just, I look out as I'm backing out, I can't see down the street if anything's coming, and it's a huge Sprinter. She can't see up the street, so we're inching. I've had an accident, she's had an accident. Our insurance rates, it's just not fair that we can't just leave our house like everyone else does. We've had numerous times that we've been late for things, or we have to call the police, and they don't show up instantaneously. We're waiting 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and then we can't plan our lives. We have to an extra hour before we can leave our house. It's just not fair that we're property owners and we kind of have no rights. As well as one other thing is like the privileges that we're supposed to be entitled to for their taxes that we pay. Our streets aren't getting swept because there's always lines of cars there, which is going to happen on the other side then. The snow removal, it's not being removed because of all the cars. So we have to shovel ourselves out, shovel all the stuff from the plows, and then shovel a whole car width that they did not plow because they can't.
In other words, the
weed
last
in and out of cars.
snowstorm was the 18 inches.
And we have to deal with that.
And they went up on the south side and screw us on the other
And then
side.
the
They
people
couldn't, first of
were
all, they
mad.
couldn't do anything because of the cars being parked.
People were angry when they...
One of you speak at a time, please.
They couldn't do anything because of the cars being parked. So finally, I called up because I do school crossing guard, and I said, hello, we had school, 2-hour delay. I said, I can't get out. I had my driveway, and then you had the other side of the plows took over the 18 inches, put their stuff from the north side on top of the 18 inches. And so I said, do you want me to go to work? I said, somebody better pick me up, and somebody better bring me home because I can't get out of the driveway.
So would you guys be okay or in favor of moving the cars to the opposite side of the road to park? From where they currently
No parking
are?
on your side.
Okay.
No
with the
parking on your
exception
side.
of what about spacing or parking areas that?
Like striping, yes. We would stripe, but actually do some proper striping in front of the condo.
And if they're outside of that, because you can stripe this way, if they're outside of that, they get a ticket.
I mean, we can incorporate an entire striping program, like even lines delineating where you're not supposed to park. So that's really, my question is though, is that something you're satisfied with? Remove the cars which are currently parking on the north side of the road, which is along all the houses and the curb cuts, and moving it to the south side, which is mainly in front of the condo, with some striping. Would that be, and no parking then on where the houses are? Is that something you're open to?
I mean, if that's the only alternative, I personally would like no parking from my house to the corner and no parking. I mean, I would like just be free to leave my house when I want to.
Well, that's part of what I'm saying. There would be no parking on your side where your driveway is at all, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And even on the other side, we could have the spots only go down to a certain part towards North Main and have it striped diagonal. There's striping, you ever see those like diagonal stripes and they're it's it's actually saying it's a no parking area.
Parallel
to the street.
It couldn't be diagonal because it's
No,
over there.
I didn't mean diagonal parking. The lines that go diagonal that denote it's a no parking area. Okay.
Providing big white truck that's been there for 6 weeks.
We're going to figure out that.
No, what I just meant is
There's a couple others too.
A car, I shouldn't say you could learn to how to handle backing out and making sure you're not hitting anything, but that truck is one of these days, it's at this stage of the game, and that's just sitting there.
But that truck won't be a problem anymore, because if that truck decides to park in the condo area, like where we've striped, it's not really blocking anything. It pulls out and it pulls in, because the only thing that could be blocking, but it's got to be back off Hildreth, would be if somebody's pulling out of Hildreth and wants to take a left-hand turn to go to North Main Street, if that's there.
That truck has a habit of not parking very close to the curb.
Thank you.
He was about 3 feet
Yeah, about
away.
3 feet, 2 feet to 3 feet
Well,
away from the curb.
But keeping in mind, that will now, I mean, we can't get a car that parks too far off the curb.
But I said,
Everybody's against
under the
curb.
circumstances.
So that being said, you now will possibly have the same problem that was 30 years ago, where you're backing out,
Well-
and there is now, where it was wide open and clear, and nothing but a sidewalk and a curb, it's going to be a vehicle.
Yeah.
So remember now, the onus now, again, still falls on you to be mindful.
We have cameras in our cars.
We don't
that
have,
are now-
Well-
we don't have privilege to that.
But just so, the responsibility, just so you know, as a driver, will fall
Yeah,
on.
yeah, no, of course,
To be
but
mindful of that. But, you know, but that is the proposal we're talking about, is remove the cars from the front of your homes and your drivers primarily.
Well, we'd be able to see up the street and
Yes.
down the street, and
Yes.
then, like I said, make as far as learning to remember that somebody isn't behind you all this time now.
You'll
but-
figure it out.
Yeah.
That is easy to
Yeah,
figure
yeah,
out.
no.
If the first 2 or 3 hits, you'll finally figure it out.
Yeah.
We don't need any more of that.
No, I was just going to say under the supervisor.
But that's
And when
one
the
of the
plow
things.
comes down your street and pushes the stuff into your driveway, which happens on every one of the
Well,
streets.
no, that-
You still have to get out and shovel that out. And you're
that
not
I
allowed to
don't-
throw it in the street, by the way.
No, that I don't mind, but I said when I had to do my driveway and half of the street.
Yeah, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
like, no
And then
way.
when they were digging themselves out, they were mad that they were all shoved in. So then they took all the stuff and they threw it in front of our driveway.
In front of
So
the driveway,
from
our
cars
driveway
And
again.
from around the car. So we were just doubly blocked. And then the village had to send someone additionally and have a bobcat, whatever it is, come and take all that and move it. So it's like all that, they're
Yeah.
causing so much.
Now, ironically, what they were doing is clearing the one side of the road that has no curb cuts. So by
Yeah,
moving
right.
the traffic or the parking traffic to that side of the road, they now will be able to come by and clear where all the curb
Right.
cuts are. So that will fix it.
Help that.
That will help.
Okay, anything else you have?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Donna? Oh, yeah. Any other?
Any other comments from the public? Barbara?
Oh, wait,
Hi, Barbara Wilson again. I just think that's an excellent proposal that you just put forth, Trustee McGann. I thank you for giving it, so much thought. And also, Trustee Ostrowski, I thank you and all of you for going out there and taking a look and taking your time out of your busy days to take a look and try to resolve this problem. And I really would like to thank all the neighbors for reaching out across the island, trying to work this out. I think a compromise is the best thing for us to do here. And also with respect to the snow, I know Sag Harbor frequently gives a ban on parking during some busy snowstorms. And, if that's something
have that.
that
We have
the
that.
village
It's not followed.
right, has to do, then that's maybe something that the village has to do. So, thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Before we finish this, I would like to hear from you because we talked about trucks being parked in the parking lot and you have a concern because your septic is there. Could you elaborate on that? Because that's important to know.
My name is Pat Cawley. I live in the condo, 26 Layton Avenue. We're going to have work done in the next month or so. They're going to resurface the driveway. They're going to work on some water leaks that I believe from the septic tanks. And I don't know what the weight will hold back there as far as trucks. You only have 2 signs back there for contractors to come in and out to park up against the fence, which is away from most of the water tanks or in the septic tanks. I couldn't tell you how much weight it will hold, but that's the only time we've had anybody come in.
Would you
there.
find that the trucks that might park there, that may be residents of the condos, are pickup-sized trucks? I mean, what's the
No.
weight of them? No?
No.
They're bigger, they're mostly those tall sprint.
Oh, they are? Like the ones that are parked on the north side of Layton? Okay.
Tell you, one of the problems has been,
Well,
from what
maybe
I've
they
seen,
can't have park back there and they have to park on the street there.
the construction that's across the street that's been going on for 3 years, that's where all the trucks are at. There's electric trucks, there's contractor trucks, there's about 4 or 5 trucks every day. That's taken up more spots and more traffic going on, and it's been 3 years. I mean, how long does a construction site allow it?
Question. It is a good question. That's a good question.
Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You had a comment?
My name's Dennis Warcol. I live over around the corner on Jennings. Like I said the last time, I walk a dog a couple of times a day. So when you mentioned before about signage on our neighbors on Layton, somebody said they were going to put up signs, redo signs to eliminate parking from midnight till 6?
No, we said that the law on that side actually was to...
It was, in other words, on the books now.
It's on the books now, but...
That would really be crucifying those people.
Yes.
Right.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
And Barbara, I think you had a comment?
I did.
Come on.
Evening, Barbara McEntee, 43 Lee Avenue. I don't live on any of those streets, and I really don't know about these particular issues, but I have found on many of the streets in the village, the truck situation is really out of control with trucks and huge construction jobs and trucks taking up entire streets. Today there was a particular problem because there was an accident, but Lee Avenue, which I live on the corner of, you couldn't get up or down Lee Avenue at all because 2 trucks were parked there. And I got out and asked this man to leave. He would not move his truck. Now, he could have pulled into the driveway of wherever he was doing the work, which I don't even know. But I'm almost wondering if there doesn't seem to be the need for some sort of an ordinance of work trucks, and do they have to be on the property of where they're working, or maybe there has to be a place where they park and they may have to walk or whatever. But it seems what these people are going through is just ridiculous. I mean, that should never happen. And the truck that's being allowed to park there, for who owns it? Does anybody know who owns it? The white truck, just the white truck? I mean, it's really insane, but I guess I just, in hearing their problem, have seen it all around today and had this particular problem myself and have seen it on First Neck, Captain's Neck, all of these houses that are being built. You're literally curving in and out of trucks, and it's dangerous for walkers, baby carriages, joggers, everybody. And I don't seem to feel that there's any ordinance about when you can.
It's a relatively new issue that's been going on for a couple of years. And I think that part of that problem, I mean, nobody wants to see big trucks in front of their house, but also the other problem is they're parking on both sides of the street. And that is a real issue, because if you're parking on both sides of the street, you're exactly right, you are going like this, and there's danger in that. I think we would like to see all those trucks be pulled on those larger properties down on First Neck and all of them. They should be off the street. But they don't want to do that, and the people who own those houses don't want them on their property.
Well, of course, but if they have to,
I mean, we struggle with the small properties that can't fit those trucks on their property. We struggle with that because there's no place for them to go. But you are correct. We really need to limit it to one side and not both sides, because there's danger in that if there was a fire, the fire department can't get down the streets.
No, they couldn't.
So we have
Today
to
they
talk
could
about
not have gotten, nobody could have gotten down that street, and they own fire truck or whatever. But again, and with these people, I haven't been on either one of those streets, but sitting there and listening to it, it just sounds absurd.
Yeah, no, they have a very tough time.
And I'm sure that the condominiums being built there changed everything, and people having twice as many cars these days changed it. But again, shouldn't the homeowners and the condominiums be responsible for a certain number of parking spaces that they have to have or that they have to provide?
Well, that's what we're trying to, well, yes, but it was passed many, many years ago.
Yes.
And the village allowed them to have 30 units and 20 parking spots. So the village really gave permission for that, and now we have, and that was back
They were very
when a
good at
lot of
math.
those units.
They were what?
Very good at math.
Yes.
And that was when many of those units were used as a second home for people, so they weren't living there 7 days a week. So now we have people living there 7 days a week, a couple, he has his car, she has her car, or whatever, and now we have 2 cars and people living there 7 days a week. It falls back on the village because we gave permission for something that is inadequate right now. So that's what we're trying to figure out.
Good luck.
But as a matter of interest, I think people who even have large vehicles parked on one side of the street that try to pull out of their driveway have a very difficult time. I'm on Meeting House Lane, and quite frankly, everybody on my street takes their life in their hands, especially if they back out onto the street. It's just, you cannot see a thing. And as a matter of interest, the fire marshal explained to me that Layton is 25 feet wide, Hildreth is 23 feet wide. The width of a vehicle is 8 feet. A fire truck needs 10 feet. And if they need to pull their ladder out, they need another 7. So if you have even cars parked on one side of the street and a lot of traffic,
You don't have enough room.
yeah, and that is the safety issue that we as a village have, not just your area. And I do feel for all of you because it's not your fault what was put in 30 years ago. So,
And what qualifies whether there's parking on the street or not? In the area that I live, nobody parks on the street generally, but I do see sometimes cars parked there. I mean, nobody knows whether you're allowed to do that or not. There are no signs. There are no, and I guess
Usually
there
done
were
by
signs in this
street-by-street
area.
process. Done by street by street, that's why.
Okay.
That's never been an issue in the past. Should that become an issue going forward, but then it's,
Well, and then there has to
precedent.
be an enforcer for that as well.
exactly.
Then someone has to enforce those lines. So, anyway.
But parking on one side of the street, to Nancy's point, versus both sides on the areas that are where there's no driveway and curb cut, I think that's a big help, and it is nice that compromise, so.
Well, they obviously want to work together, but it's all around the village, not only just
Right.
there, so,
No,
anyway,
the
thank you.
work trucks, that's an issue, again, in and of itself, which has been brought up many times up here, too.
But I have a question. The public hearing here says Hildreth and Jennings.
Yes.
We just discussed Layton.
Yes.
I know, because
So-
Layton came up in the middle of it.
Okay.
There was a component of it, we just never really put it into.
There is a component of the law that was on Layton, again, on the north side, the intersection, distance from the intersection was part of the law.
Oh, right.
So, obviously, in the comments that were raised by the folks, both on Hildreth or otherwise, and the concern for the people on Layton was if you start restricting on these other streets, it's going to pour over, not knowing that there's already the restrictions on the books. So I think it's all right, but nonetheless, I think what I'm hearing and what you've described before is that you want to come up with some other solutions, and which will require revisions and another proposal, which will be subject to hearings.
Right.
So-
So the current law, as it was proposed, is off the table completely now. We need to
Well,
revisit and study it.
You would have to close the hearing, and then
Okay.
thereafter, what you want to do with it would be, if you decide not to adopt anything and essentially tabling that, that's your business. But on the other hand, I'm hearing that you're going to ask me to draft some other provisions that sort of go towards the compromise that you're discussing, which will be a totally new local law,
Right.
which will be subject to a hearing.
Because the current one states no parking on any side of the street, and that's not acceptable, right?
Yeah, I mean,
that's what
if the
we're-
board did
okay.
nothing, you have
For
the existing
Hildreth
code. That's
and
why I
Jennings.
reiterated, if you do nothing, you have the existing code, which needs signage, that needs enforcement, so that's an issue. But it sounds like that's not a solution to the people, and you want to amend it. So the proposal will require a further hearing.
And we also want to make sure that on Hildreth, that those 4 spots are open for the condominium.
Well, I don't know,
No, on
No, we-
Hildreth, as you come around the corner. There's really enough for 4 cars there and enough space from the corner to,
Well, not just that. I don't think we've ascertained whether we want to incorporate no parking on the entire Hildreth Street. Now, do we still have, can we have comments, because that is on here? Can we get to comments on that? Anybody from Hildreth who wants to comment about whether there should be no parking?
12 to
well, I
6.
think there's...
I'm actually
yeah.
from Hildreth because my
12 to 6.
apartment faces, and my address is number 1 Hildreth Street. And like I said before, I like the proposal that Trustee McGann put forth regarding both Layton and Hildreth, the 4 spots being striped. And I think that that's...
But the other part of what's proposed for Hildreth is that that's only one component of it. The Hildreth is being proposed to have no parking on both sides of the street from 12 to 6.
Right.
Which doesn't exist now. Right now, there are no parking restrictions at all on Hildreth. So that 4 spot is basically an allowance, but part of the original
Exception,
proposed is saying they would, on the table to have...
Well, with respect to
from
those
midnight to
4
6.
spots, I would ask that they be allowed to park.
That would,
Right,
yeah,
okay.
that's fine.
Very good.
That's not an issue. That we
Yes.
would do.
But I'm asking, is anybody from Hildreth who has an
To
issue?
the rest of it,
Hildreth and Jennings, I'm sorry, Hildreth and Jennings, yes. Yeah, no, I read
with
that
respect to
letter.
that, I will leave it up to your due consideration and the
Yeah.
other folks that are living further
Yeah,
down the road
The 4
there.
spots have always, that's kind of been carved out.
And just another thing that I'd like to say, given what was already stated here, is that the other day I was going to the hospital for a little procedure, and on both sides of Lewis Street, there were landscapers that, not on the same side, of course, but on opposite sides, had dropped their workers and their trailers. And of course, they were coned and everything else, but the point is, I had to zigzag it out, and I thought, if this was an ambulance, this is a very dangerous situation.
It is very.
Thank you.
I think that's a different discussion. We really need to visit how landscapers
Yes.
put their trailers, but let's go back to
No, I think
Hildreth
what
and
we
Jennings.
really need to do is we need to make a decision on what days people can park on the south side of the street, or the east side of the street, or the west side of the
Well,
street,
right
and
now-
what
right now,
days,
let's get back
so
to-
that we can only park on one side of the
All right,
street.
let's get to Hildreth and
You're
Jennings.
getting too confusing.
Let's
know,
get back to Hildreth and Jennings. which are
Sorry.
here.
Okay, so
Christina.
getting back to, Hildreth and Jennings, Christina Gale, 48 Jennings Avenue. So I have grown up in the area of Hildreth and Jennings, very accustomed to the whole area there. I don't feel that Jennings is congested at all. Hildreth's is, and not just from the hours of 12 to 6, but more so during the day. Like everybody's pointing out here with the landscaping trucks parking on either side of the street, it's just a problem. I don't see where banning the parking from 12 to 6 is really going to do anything either way, especially on Jennings. It just doesn't seem to have an effect either way.
I agree
So
with you.
you don't find on Jennings, just a question, you don't find on Jennings any of the village Main Street or restaurant business coming and parking on your street at night? Okay.
No.
Well, that's what I
Not
want
at
to
all.
know. I just
Not at
asking.
all.
Okay.
There was a few years back from the social club, when they first opened up, coming over onto Layton Avenue in the front part of Layton. And I think that has subsided. It was also on Pulaski Street, Elm Street, and you've all put up signs, and that's taken care of that problem. They go to the, they use the train station parking, and they have valet, which I guess they've worked out with Riverhead Building. So that's where a lot of that parking is going now. And so, no, I don't think so. When Nello's was in business, there was a little bit more walking traffic going from the social club to Nello's, but since Nello's isn't there anymore, I don't find that to be a problem either.
Okay.
No. But I will say, I do agree with everybody else, or not everybody, but some people who have spoken about that large white Sprinter van that's on Layton Avenue. It's a problem.
Who owns this damn thing?
I mean, it's been there for like a couple of months now.
This guy's famous.
Yeah, he's famous. It's like the white van on Layton Avenue.
Does the police department run a vehicle check on
Yes,
who
we
owns
can.
it?
Absolutely.
And that's what we should do, and find out who owns it, and then...
Because, I mean, I don't even live on Layton, but if I'm coming around the block, it obstructs my view, and the other day, a delivery truck was trying to come into Layton, I'm trying to go
Does
this
it ever move
way.
at all?
No.
So
No.
maybe somebody just parked it there and abandoned it, no?
There's ladders.
They have maybe 3 trucks.
I'm assuming there's no
That is their shop. They leave it there, and they take the trucks, and they get everything out of it. So they're getting a free, like, rental shop on the street for their business, and they pull their other trucks up. So at nighttime, there's 3 trucks on the street. It's the first doors on the right-hand side. I mean, we know where people are. I have a picture of the license plate if you want it. We know, they come out and they have probably 4 cars. We've seen, because we walk, we're outside doing stuff, we see them, 4 different vehicles plus these trucks. They've got like 7 cars in there, and they also have, I've talked to Marlene about overcrowding in their apartment. They have too many people in there. So I was told as of December they won't be renewed. I don't know, but this truck, when the ordinance officer came and was talking to us about things, the woman came running out. There's a warning that was put on the truck, it was red, and it's now pink because it's been there since 2 months. That they saw, they just didn't look at it. And she came running out and said, we're moving it to the shop just to get the ordinance officer to go away. And it's been since before July 4th, and I've not been touched.
Yeah.
I've not been touched. So they're just keeping it there they go there for supplies. It's like they're,
It's a storage.
on the street. And I just think there's no law that doesn't we can move that, like, they can just stay there for indefinitely.
Definitely. I mean, I was always under the assumption that especially if something just stays and stays and stays, but I was told that it's registered, it's this, that's next, it can stay there for eons.
No, we'll take care of it.
But there isn't not being built, and there's nothing for sale, you can down there, we can't see, driving, we can't see anything.
No,
It's too close to the corner.
It is too close.
Definitely too close to the
Very close to the corner where you're trying to make a
Yeah.
right-hand turn there.
Yeah.
People are making a left.
That's a blind turn.
Well, that's where the initial Layton Avenue discussion came to remove parking from North Main Street. That's kind of where it all, and then it all went into everything else. It was removing at least a portion of the parking from North Main Street going east because of that.
Council, you would recommend that we close the hearing then on Hildreth
Yeah, I
Street?
would recommend.
Oh, wait, no, people still have a few things to say
Take any
first.
more comments, but at the end, I would recommend you close and move on to another proposal.
Sorry, Sheila Pfeiffer, 56 Hildreth, and we're back after 15 years. I've only been there now 3 weeks, so I don't have a lot of current experience. Certainly, there's a lot more traffic and parking than there used to be. I would just like to say that there is a huge problem during the day. There's also a problem during holiday weekends and weekends in general at night with a lot of parking. People apparently don't have enough space in their driveways to accommodate their guests, and therefore the street is, but I think it is more of an issue during the day. And I would just like to encourage the board to look into the idea of, not just for Hildreth Street, I'm sure, thinking about having it be on one side or the other, because there is no question that there have been several days when I can barely get my tiny little Honda Insight down the street, let alone if I were a bigger car or a...
As a resident of Hildreth Street, Hildreth Avenue, would you be for or against having parking restrictions from midnight to 6 a.m.?
I'm not sure. I will say openly, I did sign the letter to bring this issue to the board, because it seemed to me I wasn't living there full-time then, and so I wasn't sure what the situation was. I think it should be looked into. But as some people have said, I'm not sure the nighttime solves the problem. I think the daytime is as much of a problem as the nighttime.
Okay, thank you.
But there's definitely people, with a lot of cars.
Yes, and that's been addressed, and those people have come up and said it's just for the reasons you said. It only happens in the summer because that's when their guests are coming out, we're entertaining, and the rest of the year it's a non-issue, or not as large of an issue.
But I was pleasantly surprised. See, there's a lot of children on that street. And, I'm extremely careful when I back out, but it becomes much more of an issue. There's baby carriages, dog walkers, all kinds of, kids playing basketball. People
So you're more concerned with
people next to
daytime.
me have 2 toddlers. It's like,
So you're more concerned with
daytime
with safety,
activity.
daytime, and,
Not so much,
you know,
and
maybe it
the
spills
night
over
hour.
tonight, too.
Okay.
Ms. Pfeiffer, though, right now, there's parking on both sides of the street, and there is really no comfortable, safe passing, right? And
There's no
then
signage at all, as far as I can see.
There is.
No one would have the slightest clue what the parking regulations are.
Right. Interestingly, in the only place where they allow cars on two sides of the street for a 23-foot street is in New York City, but the street's one way.
Right.
You're right. And so, to your point.
Don't make it one way.
Don't go there.
I don't want to.
Please, don't go there.
But, yeah. There can't be parking on both sides.
No, I think we're going to have to go.
Any other comments?
Any other comments from
Yes.
Hildreth Jennings?
My name is Alice Flynn, and I live at 59 Layton Ave. I don't want to bring up Layton again, except to say that we really need a speed limit sign on Layton. They fly up. I think anyone who lives on Layton knows that people fly up and down that street, and my poor husband is constantly whistling at people as they speed by. So we need to get him off the porch. And
I think it's happening. I think it's happening all over the village.
it's terrible. And I think
But that
it
is a
connects
big
to Elm.
straightaway, yes.
It's really bad.
So there's
Maybe
no
put a
speed
deer
limit
crossing
sign.
There's no
speed
speed
limit?
limit sign, and when one time my husband did talk to the police about it, they said, no, well, there's no sign there, so we can't really stop anyone, which does not sound
So
possible.
there's no speeding sign in either direction?
No. Yeah, but there is a general village speed limit, but it's not anywhere on Layton, and maybe they need reminders, because I told the police once if they parked at the foot of Layton, they could make a fortune just with their radar gun, because people zoom up and down. So that's it. Thank you.
White truck, speeding sign, what else?
Just remember.
Any other
Remember,
comments?
just be careful what you wish for. Start hitting signs all over,
Maybe we put
because
it-
remember, you reside there. No, I only said it from experience, because there's a lot of people in this room, and quite honestly, you will not all agree on where it should go, what should be placed, and not everybody's going to be happy with it. And the speeding, just please be mindful of that, because you're going from where there's nothing been addressed to we just discussed a half a dozen things. Things are going to change, so something's going to happen. So just please be mindful of that.
Any other comments?
I have a question.
What- Yes, yeah, please.
There's a simple answer, but my name is Penny Wright, or Penelope Wright. I live on Layton Avenue, and my question is it possible in principle to treat Hildreth Street separately from Jennings Avenue?
Yes,
of course.
And I think that's part of what's come up from this conversation, that I think a lot of people, Jennings, they're wondering why they even included it in the first place. So I think Hildreth has
Because
become...
I would comment also that I drive up Jennings every single day. There are very few cars parked there. It actually seems like it's a little wider, but maybe that's just because there aren't too many cars. But I mean, is it possible it's slightly wider by a couple of feet? It just doesn't seem to be a problem at all.
No, I don't think there is, and I think it is. And I drive through those roads, because I
Okay.
live down the road off of North Main Street. So I'm continuously driving through there, even before all this. And I don't see Jennings as an issue.
We should measure it and check.
Go to the tape measure. if you want.
But Hildreth is 2 feet shorter than Layton.
Any other comments? Any comments from the trustees?
I've said what I want to say. So we're going to close this out as existing, and then propose that we bring some new considerations.
Right.
Yes.
All right.
So I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on the parking restrictions in Hildreth and Jennings.
Second.
All in favor?
So people know what that means. We've just closed out as this current law is written, as it's been presented for the past few public hearings, and it's now null and void, and now we're going forward with incorporating Layton Avenue and all these other things.
And I just...
Stay tuned.
And it's not a one, this is, so please continue to,
And I would just like to thank you all for bringing so much to our attention.
You're right.
Donna, you say something?
I'd just like to thank you for bringing everything to our attention.
That's it. Let's go to the next one.
You're not a shy group, which is good.
As I spoke to the garage, they said they had ordered the signs for us.
Sheila, nice to see you.
And everyone was told that sign. Sorry, I haven't either.
I don't know, have an answer to, Donna, because that was news to me. I would prefer they not go up, because then if they gotta go up, they gotta be enforced. Not that it can't be enforced without the signage, because the law is a law.
Could they go up until we have some kind of...
The highway superintendent said he's not going to do it until the mayor tells him to do it, and while this is pending, he doesn't want to go there 3 times and take them up, put them off, change them.
Okay, so the answer is, while this is all pending, no, the signs will not go up, as per the mayor, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the superintendent.
And the superintendent.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys, for your participation.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, right. It's the story of our meetings, you know?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, I know you do. I know exactly where you, yeah, right. We've got the,
Back there today.
Okay. See?
you're missing the good part.
Already habits have changed.
Classic.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Public hearing.
Public hearing number 5, I make a motion to open the public hearing on peddling and soliciting.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
I don't remember us doing this. When did we do this?
So this was, there was some complaints made to the village board. We looked at our code to bring it up to date in 2 parts. Currently, the code prohibits peddling on certain portions of your commercial areas, the village business areas, as well as your beach ends, and so that you don't have hawking and vending. So this is an update, just taking into account that when this was adopted originally, there were some beaches that weren't included, such as portions of Meadow Lane and Gin Lane. Little Plains Road, Old Town Road are added. It also clarifies as to individuals peddling within the commercial district as well.
Any comments from trustees, from the public?
I have a lot of comments to make. Okay.
That's good to see you.
Yes,
We're glad you're here.
Thank you. I just was wondering, with respect to A, how would that, or what would the effect of this be on persons who go out and campaign and distribute literature?
That's not commercial, so you're not promoting soliciting orders for goods or wares or merchandise or other commodities.
Well, a vote is a commodity, in my opinion, but...
Still soliciting, but it's good, but it's still
I
soliciting.
don't think
so-
there'll be a judge that would find that.
That one might.
I wouldn't be the judge of that, so. And with respect to C, I was just wondering if Elm Street could be added in there, just because that has been a problem on Elm Street. There've been a lot of people going door to door trying to solicit, and just the other day on Hill Street, I stopped a woman who was going into each and every person's mailbox and putting something in there. She had a truck in front of her, and she was walking, and she was dumping something in everyone's mailbox, and I told her that she was not permitted.
That's a federal
Under the
violation.
federal law.
And that's where the person just goes to
Go
the
into someone's
postmaster and say, this was put in my post. That can be handled a different way. That's in the federal regulation.
She
right there.
stopped when I told her, so.
But most people don't know that.
Right, well, she did not know that, she
But that's a
said,
federal-
and I believed her by the shock on her face. But the people on Elm Street, I've seen the trucks stopping, beeping their horns to have workers come out and buy coffee, tea, on a regular basis at some of those construction sites on
So you're talking
Elm
about the
Street.
food trucks?
Food trucks.
That's a whole
On Elm Street?
Connected to a construction job or just in general?
Just to construction jobs, but they beep their horns, which we don't appreciate at 6 a.m.
I don't think we can link that to this street
And-
peddling.
But I don't think food trucks should be going through neighborhoods.
Well, they've also been trying to sell knives and other things out of the back of their cars, knocking on doors.
6 a.m., the workers aren't supposed to be there working at 6
Well, they can
a.m.
Oh,
still
I
eat. They
totally
can arrive and
agree with
eat.
you, Trustee McGann. And I do try to point that out. when I can.
All right, but that's not really what we're here to discuss, though.
Right. But there have been people on Elm Street that have been going back and forth to houses trying to sell wares.
Yeah.
It was wallets one time.
Well, I think
It's like bizarre
that's
things
covered
sometimes.
in here.
Right. But I'm just asking if you could add Elm Street
Because Elm Street's not one of them.
those streets.
Well, then we'd have to add all other residential streets.
Well, I
This is
think the
just-
reason why they come off of Elm Street is because of Hampton Road, the businesses, and the proximity to the train station.
Well, my assumption was that you weren't pinpointing streets, you were pinpointing the ends.
Well, there was twofold. One is the streets within the commercial districts was where the code was originally drafted, plus the beach ends. But there was a catch-all of all the portions of the public areas in the village business zoning district.
I mean, let's face it, this is all based, there was an article written in the paper, and we know where this is stemming from. Particular sales activity by a couple of new pop-ups. The other stuff is all nice too, but this is really to address that. I'd like to kind of really stick to that as why.
I mean, I'm sure that several of you have experience too with the chocolate bars. People knocking on your door trying to sell chocolate bars, and they've been in the CVS parking lot trying to sell chocolate bars, and also in the Stop and Shop parking lot.
Well, I must look awful disagreeable, because I haven't had anybody try to sell me anything.
I must
I
look
got
like
the
I
ice.
love chocolate.
I got Mr. Softy, but I don't have anybody coming up to sell me ice cream, chocolate bars to my
Told them
street.
that I love chocolate. But no, there has been an,
I mean,
they're
I
trying to
think
say it's like not-for-profit
that could be
organizations
addressed.
to raise money for
Huh?
children's programs.
I think that could be addressed as like an extra thing. Right now, we're really here to address a couple of particular examples, again, which even the press wrote about.
Oh, I don't know, I didn't read that article.
Huh? But it's about a couple of pop-up stores who with very aggressive sales tactics of approaching people walking down the street, pedestrians, and
Okay.
actually chasing them down. So
I'm
that's
just saying
really.
that it's also, it is extending into Elm Street. So, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor, I have a question, and maybe it's just a draft confusion, but I had read an earlier draft.
Two proposals. One was for an extensive licensing program and the like. And then this is just modeling after your current code, which is prohibiting within the business district.
Okay,
That's what your current code actually does.
okay, so,
What you don't have, like other communities have, is a whole peddling license thing. And frankly, I don't know if the village here would want to promote that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're prohibiting it within the commercial districts, and then all you're talking about is then promoting it in all your residential districts, where I don't think you want to promote that either.
no. So let me ask the question, the ice cream truck. How is that operating? Or the food trucks to Barbara's point, how are they
Well, the
operating?
food truck, I think, is a whole different thing than the ice cream man.
Well, currently, the food trucks or the ice cream trucks can't do it within your village business zone.
Yeah,
There's no
but they can go through
prohibition
the
on
neighborhoods.
residential zones. But
The food
is
trucks-
that becoming an issue? Then we can explore that in a separate.
I like hearing that little tune.
All right, we're not going after the ice cream man. The price.
We're not going after
All
the
right,
ice cream.
let's pull back a little bit here.
I
The
can't
food
run
trucks
fast
for
enough
the
to get out there. That's
Jesus. Now, the food trucks for the work sites. And again, it's a different thing, but they come because that's where their workers are, and that's a pretty standard practice, because they can't all go to delis to get food, so the food trucks. If you want to look into that somehow, perhaps. But again, if you're going to restrict that, then you then have to go over to the ice cream truck. You can't get a little bit pregnant here.
Yes, you
have to go after everything. You can't
Well,
cherry
the
pick.
ice cream
So that's-
truck is
be a little-
seasonal,
so be a little careful.
and-
Be a little happy here with extending a lot of rules and regulations to the
I'm just trying to clarify what this is, and I now understand what occurred, so it's fine. Well, let's address the matter at hand, which the mayor had just identified as the crux of this.
Yes,
But I do think people have issues, to Barbara's point, and others, with some of the others, and not everybody's thrilled about the ice cream truck tune. I have a number of complaints on that, so I just have to put that out there.
Yeah.
Sorry. Some people like it, some people don't.
Trying to avoid that being that.
Going through the country streets.
I love the ice cream truck. I love hearing it. I don't buy it, but I love it.
I do and I do.
Yeah.
Both. Okay. Any comments?
So what did you add, in getting back to what brought this on, was aggressive sales tactics on our business streets. What is
Well,
this
that's one of
addressing?
the issues, and it was just clarifying where that can't occur, and clarifying that that can't occur in your business district. So
what can they do? Because Barbara brings up good points.
Well, you need to know also our code prohibits soliciting on private property.
Yeah, I saw that right here. So
That's already in the
it's already
code. Article 1 of the Chapter 84, restricts any peddling or soliciting on private property. So anybody going door to door, that's already prohibited. You could call code officer and get them
But if
to-
somebody's standing in the door jamb of their business, can they say, hey, ma'am, mister, sir, can you...
If they're in their shop, that's fine. But if they're on public property, they can't do it.
If they're going out onto the sidewalk and asking for people.
And that's what my understanding is. They're not only going out on the sidewalk, they're going down the sidewalk, down another portion of
they're
the
chasing
public
people
street,
down the
public
street.
areas.
Well, in the U.S. Open, it was some very aggressive. I don't know if that's still happening, but then it was some very aggressive.
And they're doing it at the beach. I was approached yesterday by a solicitor at Little Plains Beach, so it's happening, wherever people are congregating, that's where you're going to go and find the solicitation and the peddling.
What were they selling at the beach?
They were soliciting orders for car washes.
Oh, yeah, the car washing cars were around. In other words, they'll pick up your car, take your car and have it washed.
Like an Uber service.
Yeah, it's like
They're
only
trying to
it's a
get their
car
name
washing
out,
service.
but
I
they're
can't
actually
get over
going
it.
up to people on the beach, handing out
They have
cards and
vehicles that
things.
say
and-
they're car washing.
I don't think it's a lot of Coopers, but the other beaches, we don't have that? I thought we had provisions for Coopers, but probably not.
You do. You
Just for
you have in your beaches, you can't do it. Clearly the rules, you can't do it in your beaches, but you also have the rules currently in the code that you can't do it on your accesses to your beaches as well.
I would,
Particularly parking a cart, so you don't want the food or the ice cream truck parking at one of your
Correct, that's
beaches
why we
and now
never had
trying to sell or solicit.
and I would question where the car washers are disposing of their water.
You're right.
I don't know anything about it.
But they currently are not allowed to solicit on any of our beaches or anything.
I know, that's what I'd like to know.
But getting back to the matter.
Let's get back to the matter at hand.
So to the aggressive sales tactic, the
keep the
version
car.
earlier had outlined shouting as a prohibitive part, because the
Well, it's
complaints
still
that...
part of it,
but
vending,
let me
hawking,
just
pushing,
finish.
promoting.
Thank you. The complaints that I have received, and it has not been a small number, have been people telling me they walk past these stores and people are even standing within their store on the curb and shouting at them, hey, do you live here? Hey, you look good. Hey, I have something for you.
Right, that's why I was asking, does that still,
And
does
so
that
that,
include that?
I don't see that now in this verbiage.
Well, you can't, under this law, you're regulating the conduct on public property.
Okay. So then we're
Private
not...
property is regulated in a different manner under zoning or otherwise, but
So
not.
to that point, the trustee
Alan.
Alan brought up, thank you.
It's a long night.
So, for the ones yelling from, as rightfully so, from the inside of their private business, what would be the recourse for that then? If somebody is offended by that, is that like then a charge against them for, I mean, just
We'd have to look at other sections of the code or the criminal procedure law for.
Well, let's proceed ahead here.
So, but this at least stops the aggressive
The
stuff
intent
on the
of
street.
this is to stop the aggressiveness on the street. What they do in their private retail is up to them.
But so this will address a large part of the problem, but the other part is a legitimate issue, and I just...
It is a legitimate issue, but I think you...
I'm seeing shaking of the one person in.
I think you have a hard time finding the way that they do their retail, not stepping out onto the street from their doorway.
And also, you know what, it'll mean that people won't walk on that side of the street because they don't want to be yelled at.
You don't want that either.
No, you don't want that, but I'm just saying, I don't know how to, I mean, if they're in their business and they want to yell from inside their business out to the street,
But that's what we're researching here, because the premise of the complaints are twofold. One being basically stalked on village property, which we're addressing, and the other is people don't feel comfortable walking down the street because the same person accosted them with a shout 2 hours ago, and they, we shouldn't have to feel that way, but it's not a shopping mall.
Will this impact, even mistakenly, any part of, like, when we have the sidewalk sales and people who put their merchandise on the street? Counselor?
Well, that's a zoning issue. They don't have authority to do that currently under the code.
All right, so we won't go there.
So,
The only thing you authorize is tables in connection with a restaurant who get a proper permit,
right.
outdoor dining permit.
but they get a permit.
As far as outdoor display or otherwise, that's not permitted under your
So
zoning.
if that waiter or waitress tells somebody to come in and eat their place, they're now in violation?
You have that in September when you have this.
Right, we allow it.
Sidewalk sales. you
Yeah,
have-
yeah.
That's a
when we do
special
it.
permit.
Special permit, it's a special permit.
So, that's it. We can stick to the format here. I'll make a motion to accept this.
Close the hearing?
Close the public hearing, we still.
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
And I'll make a motion to accept this and adopt this local law amendment on peddling and solicitation.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Trustee Yaz?
Aye.
Trustee Allen?
Aye.
Trustee Irving?
Aye.
Trustee McCann?
Aye.
Trustee Hatcher?
Perfect.
May I say something?
Yes.
With respect to what
happened here tonight, which I think was a wonderful thing with the neighbors. Right? I'd also like to say, I don't know if you're aware of, just yesterday, that there was an almost drowning, as you were, and the lifeguards at the beach club saved the person.
Yeah.
And not only that, but everyone who responded. It was like wonderful to see our community at its best, which I think is also what we saw tonight.
Judge, you're so 100% right, and I actually,
Was
I
Ocean
never...
Rescue there?
Yeah, I was going to mention that later,
There were
but
some individuals there, but it was mostly the two guards from...
There were three guards.
from the bathing court and Cooper's.
Chief Brenner sent me a terrific write-up here, which I will read later, because I usually don't walk around with a phone.
It was really very nice to see, and also because one of the mistakes that one of the persons made that was in the party of the person that was, the drownee, if you will, was that she ran up to the house and she called 411.
Right.
Not being from this country.
Yeah.
And maybe that would be like if we're going to do some signage or whatever at the beach, 911 for emergencies. So.
No.
But it was wonderful to see, and again, I thank you all. I think that was a great neighborly thing that happened.
No,
Thank
all
you.
of them coming together was the most exciting thing that you could possibly see. And they all worked so well.
They worked so hard in saving that man, and they did a
Yes,
great
they
job. And they're young kids, from what I understand.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, all the lifeguards.
They'll deserve ice cream and chocolate.
Well, you know what? They all seem to get younger every year.
They certainly do.
Okay, with no communications to the board, we have
Resolutions?
resolutions.
Item 1, resolve that the reading for the minutes of the public session of July 12th be dispensed with, and those minutes be accepted as filed by the village administrator, and the actions taken at that meeting be and hereby are ratified and approved. Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Resolved that the claims for the warrants dated July 24th, 2018, totaling $528,520.90. Warrant 5 General Fund, $40,912.63. Warrant 4 General Fund Payables, $868. Warrant 2 Expense Trust Fund, $300. Warrant 4 Trust Fund, $84,688.50. Warrant 3 Capital Reserve Fund, and the village payrolls for the period ending July 19th, 2018 be ordered and approved. Have a motion?
You make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Item 1, Absolute Shine Auto Spa, vehicle detailing for the ambulance and first responder vehicles, 2,800. Atlantic Coast Embroidery, ambulance uniforms, $3,505.95. Creative Visual Systems, sign supplies for the Highway Department, $1,870. David Spellman's legal fees for the Ethics Board, $1,867.50. East Coast Mines and Materials, sand supplies and dumping fees for the Highway Department, $1,201.65. Fluid Imagery, Computer Services, $4,711. Glencoe Supply, sign supplies for the Highway Department, $3,211.28. Glen Falls National Bank and Trust, ambulance LoSAP contribution for 2018, $62,382. Global Montello, 3,000 gallons of diesel fuel, $6,926.10. Granger, Parks and Building Supplies, $1,001.91. Page 4, Integrated Wireless Technologies, siren repair for the firehouse, $1,070. J&M Long Island, streetlight repairs, $2,800. Johnson Electrical Construction Corp., traffic signal maintenance for June, $1,400. Kyocera Document Solutions, copy lease for PD, $1,044.04. Long Island Truck Parts, garage supplies, $1,493.99. Malvesia Equipment, sweeper parts for the garage, for the highway sweeper, $1,024.80. Martin's General Contracting, Cooper's roof repair for the concession stand, $9,800. Nelson Pope and Voorhees, consulting fees for the planning board, $16,034.82. Norsec and Son, carting and the rent the toilets for the 4th of July parade, $9,134.50. New York State Employees Health Insurance for August, $351,838.47. Page 7, Pine Barrens Printing, receipt books for the village clerk, $1,425.09. PSE&G collection services for the fire department, $4,692.72. Yorkville Electrical Supplies, SAC Lighting Supplies, $5,203.18. And Sprague Operating Reserve, 3,000 gallons of gasoline, $6,574.50. Page 9, Verizon phone bill for June, $3,939.82, and the wireless bill, $1,275.98. Next warrant is the payables warrant. Barco Products Company, benches for the beach, $3,485.89. Gainer Construction Services, firehouse floor refinishing, $1,170. Fluid Imagery Computer Services, $1,395. Office of State Controller, made fines for the court, $13,919.10. Pitney Bowes, postage for the village clerk, $2,400. Page 2, Vulcan Fire Training, rope rescue training for the fire department, $3,200. And safety marking, street striping, $10,550.08. Last warrant is the capital reserve warrant. Malvesia Equipment, payment for the new mower, $70,716. And U.S. Industrial Corp. Fire Department mezzanine repairs, $13,972.50. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item 3, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the schedule of budget transfers to eliminate overages through July 24, 2018 for the fiscal year ending May 31st, 2018. Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Item 1, $2,000 out of Justice Court miscellaneous into Justice Court contractual. Next one is $4,000 out of law personal services, with $3,500 going into clerk contractual and $500 into claims. Next one is $15,000 out of buildings contractual, with $500 going into buildings equipment, $10,000 into building supplies and materials, $4,000 into buildings utility, and $500 into buildings fuel oil. Next one is $2,000 out of central garage miscellaneous, $500 out of central garage telephone, with $500 going into central garage utilities, $1,000 into garage contractual, and $1,000 into garage clothing. Next one is $18,200 out of police clothing, with $1,300 going into police personal services, $2,800 into police overtime, $3,700 into police seasonal, $2,600 into police telephone, $4,300 into police contractual, and $3,500 into police miscellaneous. Next one is $1,500 coming out of traffic control contractual, going into traffic control electricity. Next one is $16,000 out of fire supplies and materials, with $5,000 going to fire utilities, $1,000 to fire telephone, and $10,000 to fire contractual. Next one is $1,000 out of safety inspection part-time, $1,000 going into safety inspection personal. Next one is $5,000 out of street maintenance contractual, $3,500 into street supplies, $1,500 into street maintenance personal, and out of street lighting supplies, with $3,000 going into street lighting electricity. Next one is $800 out of park supplies, with $500 going to parks overtime and $300 to park clothing. Next one is $1,000 out of Cooper's Beach overtime, going into Cooper's Beach miscellaneous. Next one is $5,500 out of planning contractual, with $500 going into planning, commission expenditures, and $5,000 to zoning contractual. And the last one is $19,500 out of employee benefits workers' comp, $2,000 going into state retirement, $12,700 into police retirement, $800 in social security, and $4,000 into medical. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 4, resolved that the Board of Trustees accept the resignation of Stephen Lemansky from the Planning Board effective July 11th, 2018. Have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the hiring of Carolyn Wetter as a lifeguard at Cooper's Beach for the 2018 season at an hourly rate of $13.50. Have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the last one is resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby accepts the resignation of David Campbell from the Board of Ethics effective June 14th, 2018. Have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have 2 discussions items. We have the application to use Dune Beach on Saturday, August 4th for a party by Miguel Goodhue. 175 people from 6 to 11.
Anything out of the ordinary with it?
Sorry?
Anything out of the ordinary with this request?
Nope.
Standard just because of the size?
Sorry?
It's just standard because of the size?
Over 100 has to come to the board.
And we're not invited.
Yeah, the glow.
Well, it's still early.
You know, really? Oh, yeah, this will show up before, it happens. Maybe they'll get the hint.
Your box.
What is temporary LPG?
Gas.
Yes.
So they're putting up a tent. Wow. Which means the tent has got to be up there during the day, I'm sure. Right? Wow.
Standard. What we approve
There's
on
nothing out of the
there's
ordinary.
nothing out of the
Just the
ordinary.
size, that's all.
They have their time they can set up, and their time where they have to
Yes.
take
It
down.
has to be all gone, yeah, the cleanup and all that. So it only comes in front of us because of the head count.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Then we have, thanks to Matt, our beach manager, he's coming to us a little bit early, but he wants to get out on the street with this, the Cooper's Beach Sandcastle Contest for Saturday, September 1st. Rain date being Sunday, September 2nd.
I've got to tell you, that's great fun.
Yeah.
I
Such a
can't
nice
believe
event.
the incredible job some of them do in those sandcastles.
I know.
Yeah.
Amazing, you can move right in.
Yeah. You're right.
We've got a motion to approve the Sandcastle Contest for Saturday, September 1st.
I'll make that motion. yeah.
Second? Bill? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Comments from board members. Trustee Yuskremski.
Well, I was going to mention something about, as Barbara brought up earlier to say, but you have the thing from Chris, so.
Well, no,
No, go ahead, no, you have the details on it, so cover that. But I did, I just, again, wanted to thank everybody for showing up tonight for these street parking suggestions. I do implore people to remember a lot of there, and I mean it, there were a lot of suggestions, a lot of ideas, a lot of discussion all over the place tonight. And I always stress through the years that as well-intentioned, any idea we do or change we make, remember, every action has an equal reaction. And sometimes, most of the time, an unexpected one. So that's why we're going in the right direction with a lot of changes here and fixing some mistakes from the past. But I just, that's why people have to just keep in mind. Because whatever the change is, not everybody's going to be happy, is really my point.
That's a good point.
So, but thanks everybody for showing up and continuing to show up. That's all I got.
Thank you, Chris. Trustee Allen?
I'd like to discuss attainable workforce or next generation housing. Gosh, it is late, I can't even talk. And what's becoming available, we have something right in our backyard on County Road 39 is a new condo development for mixed use called Southampton Point. They have market rate and affordable units. There will be 15 affordable units, 10 two-bedroom and 2 baths will be sold for $235,000 roughly. They're not small. And then another 5 will be sold at about $350,000. They're also 2-bedroom, 2 bath, but a bit bigger. The way it works is there are HUD income guidelines, and maybe I can just pass this to Julie to kind of demystify, but you qualify based on a percentage of the area median income. And I don't know if Charlie can focus in on that. But for the 10 units that are a little on the smaller side, but not that small, I am told, individuals who are at or under 80% of the AMI can qualify for that. And for those that are at the 350,000 range, those 5, it's 130% of AMI. So if you're a family of 4, Charlie, I don't know if you can zero in just a little bit more. If you're a family of 4, I can't even see that. So,
Right here.
there it is.
On the 80%,
Okay.
yeah.
So to qualify for the purchase of the larger $350,000 units, your total combined household income would be less than $151,700 or less. So, there's many, many individuals out here that make a respectable salary, but we know how challenging it is to purchase a house. But this is a tremendous opportunity, and the lottery will be held in the late fall. So please go to the Town of Southampton Housing Registry. It's online, it's simple. And if you don't want to go, tell your kids to go so we can bring them back here and have them live here. Once you're registered, they'll notify you of the upcoming sale or lottery. And 2 homes
Great
recently.
opportunity.
Yeah, it is. And it's,
And I think actually the income's less because that's a household size. Most households are 4,
right.
so the 80% would be 93,000.
That's for
Well,
the
that's
smaller
the
units, you're
smaller.
right. Just the few units that are more expensive, those 5, they've allowed the AMI to go as high as 130. Yeah,
What's the total amount of units available?
15.
15.
But it's right
That's the
in
one
our
next to the golf
backyard.
range, right?
Yep.
Right, one of the new ones?
Yeah. So thank you, Diana Weir and others. And the next Planning Commission meeting will be on August 2nd, next Thursday at 5 p.m. in this room. The agenda topics will review an outline for the hospital area study, which this board had recommended they pursue. And also, thank you for those who worked on the revised ethics code. Just, again, Christian Pico, Vince Serbinsky, Linda Gesper, David Campbell, and Mimi Michelle Guerra, our deputy registrar. And then last of all, the discussion has really pivoted around water quality lately. And we're so fortunate to be tapping into Suffolk County Water Authority. They filter with a giant Brita for all types of contaminants, and we've got good water. But for those of us who care about water, the septic tank rebate program has just been increased. It now includes LLCs, and it includes more high-income earning individuals. So it's also increased the rebate from $15,000 to $20,000, and the Southampton Press covered it nicely this week. But the county also offers up a rebate of another $11,000. So, you can.
Town's doing 20?
Yep, the town just
Wasn't
increased.
there an issue with that, though? Didn't we talk about that with Jay Schneiderman when we were over there?
Yes, yeah.
There's an issue with it because they don't have enough
They're
people
way
to...
behind on being
And
able
so-
to distribute the funds.
So the money that the county is offering, they will probably take back because they don't have enough people to put through all the applications that people are putting in. And it was suggested that they hire more people, and they're not willing to do that. So it's a real problem.
So it's catch-22.
So, okay,
It's
so
actually
this is the
state
first time
rate.
hearing of that. That's a little bit scary.
Well, it's terrible, but, everybody suggested, well, let's get some more people, and nobody wanted to vote on that. Right? Isn't that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a little issue
The
there.
legislature, you're talking about the county legislature voted not to add staffing.
Correct.
At the county level, but not the town level.
Correct, yes,
So
yeah.
people are
That's where the
still
money's coming
eligible for the 20,000 at
Yes.
the town level. And did you hear any
But there's
issues on
delay in
that?
process.
No.
Okay, so it's the county level.
Yeah.
That's a shame, because
Yes.
it's $11,000 that,
Yes. And I believe.
It's 20,000, isn't it?
no, the town is
Town
20.
is 20,
Yeah, okay.
And the
Town is
county's up to 11.
counties less.
But even so,
But it's important as many funds
yeah.
help contribute to changing those systems over, so any losses.
Well, the expansion of who's eligible is a big thing.
It is.
And that's the first step.
Yeah.
That's going to get into our business
Yeah.
district and
Exactly.
businesses and how we'll get into our
Yeah.
district. That's important.
And I was told to just make this plug, that even if you don't replace your decades-old septic tank, that cleaning out your septic tank, even if you're not in a high-priority area, is also a big benefit, so.
All good stuff.
Yeah, all good stuff. So the town's moving along nicely, and so is the village.
Thank you, Trustee Allen. Trustee McGann.
Okay, a couple of things. All right, so I had a meeting with Paul from Highways to walk around because throughout the Village Business District, they have put tags around certain trees that really are completely dead and will have to come out. It's quite a number of them.
Cooper's Farm Road has 3.
Well, yeah, but we're not going over there. We're only doing, we're doing Hampton Road, Main Street, Job's Lane, Windmill Lane, and Nugent Street. That's where we walked, he and I. And basically, we picked apart every tree that we saw along the way. I mean, clearly, the ones that are dead, and they have to come out. And there are some that are in really bad shape, and there's a recommendation to take them out. Then there are some that have dead growth at the top. We'll probably trim them. We'll probably feed them. We're hoping that we'll be able to bring them around. Now that we have irrigation on Main Street and on the south side of Job's Lane, we're really going to baby those trees that we have issues with. So just so that everybody knows, you're going to start to see trees being taken out. They will be replaced with something. We haven't decided what we're going to do on those yet. But I don't want people horrified when they start to see all these trees coming down.
I think
But we
some of
have
those
to.
trees don't even have any leaves on them.
Yeah, some of them don't. No, they're dead, totally dead, and so they need to come out. All right, so that was that one. And then I had a meeting with Parks, and actually I spoke with Steve this afternoon. We had issue with the crepe myrtle on Windmill Lane in the boxes along Windmill Lane, and some of those are dead or broken or in bad shape, so we're replacing about 8 of them. And we were deciding, do we want the crepe myrtles? And at some point, there was another tree suggested that flowered. And Bill, I thought about you, because that flowering tree drops the flowers immediately after it comes out, and I just thought, that's a mess all over the sidewalk. We can't have that. So I opted to go back to the crepe myrtle.
Crepe myrtles.
Yeah, they're really nice. They're very nice. We have problems with those boxes because they end up after a long period of time strangling themselves because their roots can't go anywhere.
You didn't have any of those gumball ones.
No.
Sweet gum. Those are
Sweet gums.
GD sweet gums.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Rose of Sharon was the other one, but Rose of Sharon is really, it just blooms and falls, and so we can't have all those blossoms all over the sidewalk, so we decided against that, and we went back to the crepe myrtles. And the other thing that I'd like to bring up since this was such an incredibly wonderful meeting, but for years now, we've listened to people get up here and complain about work vehicles all over the village and how, it's difficult if you have no sidewalk and you're trying to go down the street, and how do you get around the work vehicle? And from what I heard tonight, which we're all quite aware of, is that we have no regulation of one side of the street parking. And so people are parking on both sides of the street. And as one woman got up and said, you're weaving in and out, which is quite dangerous. And I think that we really, at some point, have to just decide how we're going to set up streets on one side of the street parking. So whether if it's a north-south running road and you have an east or west side of the street, we're going to have to make a decision, do we want parking on the east side or the west side of the street? And if it's an east-west running road, do we want parking on the south side or the north side of the street? And we're going to have to make some decisions on that because it really is getting out of hand now.
Well, it is. The vehicles have gotten much, much larger, and the trailers are being used for storage.
And we're allowing it, so they're just going to do it.
Yeah.
So we really have to...
We need to take a look at it.
We have to really consider that, and we have to be active on that, and we really have to get that done. Because we've been listening to people for years talk about how it's dangerous, and it is dangerous. It's not fair. It's not fair to everyone. So let's get going on that. That's my thinking.
Sounds like a plan.
Just a comment, people really liked how the sidewalks were redone when you did that a couple years ago, and today even today they tell me how much they appreciate having a good sidewalk, because sometimes people don't want to drive. So another thing we could consider, this is just throwing it out there, is making it a more livable village and expanding our sidewalks, because that was a big hit on your part. Thank you.
It was, but let me just say this. You have, like in everything, you have people who appreciate a sidewalk and you have people who feel that we're more rural without it. When we wanted to expand the sidewalk on Hill Street, when we had money to do it, people came out in droves and didn't want it. They did not want a sidewalk on Hill Street. They did not want us to extend the sidewalk on Hill Street. So the money that we had left over from that is the sidewalk that we put behind the Parish Art Museum, so that people who are getting out of their cars can walk over to the old parish, the new Southampton Art Center, sorry. It was the parish then.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah. And so they could walk along there, but that was with money that was designated for Hill Street, and people on Hill Street said, I don't want a sidewalk here. Oh, hard to believe. It may change now, but that's what happened.
Well, I'll just throw out, and I think I've thrown it out before, that when I was a kid,
yeah, there were sidewalks going all
there
the way
was
down.
sidewalks that went all the way down First Neck Lane to the beach and South Main Street.
Right.
And the First Neck Lane ones were on the west side of the street.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they were all blue chip gravel.
I remember that.
Yeah, and they went all the way down, and on South Main Street, they were on the east side.
Right.
Interesting you say that, because several people have remarked to me that they can't take their senior citizen or stroller walk to our finest beach because there's no sidewalk that comes from our village business district to Cooper's and back. There's no contiguous walking.
Right. Well, there used to be.
There used to be,
Yeah.
so there's a precedent. At some point, maybe we should test that.
Yeah. Well, we could. Yeah, I don't mind that. I think that we could. And actually, I have a photograph that I keep forgetting to bring in to put in each and every one of your boxes.
Yeah.
And it's a picture of Gin Lane as it makes the bend and goes down to the Bathing Corporation of wide open space.
I have
And
that.
there was a sidewalk there, too.
There's a side, I was going to say, there was a
That's probably
sidewalk.
the sidewalk that
Yeah.
came down First Neck Lane and continued
Yeah,
down.
on around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to Rich's point, it's village right-of-way, right?
Yeah, I don't even
So-
know why we just,
I know we could do what we want, but
I don't know,
let me
we
tell
just
you
don't
something.
do it. I
good
mean, I
luck
understand
with
public input, not to bemoan that, but it is village right away, it is a public service, so but it isn't.
that. Right.
That's another day, another battle.
That is another day, and yes, a severe battle, yes.
But a key driver of a livability index apparently for a village.
Thank you, trustee.
You're very welcome, Mayor.
Trustee Hatchett?
And which trustee is it? Just kidding.
Three things, two serious and one not. Seeing as we're going to have to find a new board member for the planning board, I would love to see us, in this instance and henceforth for all the boards, the building, construction, realty business in this community has just overwhelmed us. And I wish that we would not appoint people to these boards anymore who are in the building, construction, landscaping, realty, maintenance, all that sort of thing. I think we just, it's...
So who's left?
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of people.
Maybe, in any event, part of what inspires that is, I think you all got a copy of this letter that Eric Ruttenberg wrote to the editor of the paper, but copies came to us, and I read about his complaints about the decision on Hill Street on the Zahusky property, and I really am just destroyed at what I think was an unbelievable decision, right up there with 40
I
Meadow
thought we're
Lane.
not supposed to comment on that.
No,
We're not.
it's over, it's done, right?
No,
But we're not supposed to
Okay,
comment
then.
on
it's
it.
not done.
Ignore that comment.
There you go, stricken from the record.
I'll go to the happy thing. I was reading something this
Something
weekend.
that leaked.
Somewhere back probably in the 70s when I was on the ZBA, there was a very large home built in the village, and Zsa Zsa Gabor, husband.
that.
What street is it? It's on either Little Plains or Captain's Neck? It's
No,
on- it's set back.
On the other side of Cooper's, it's on.
Cooper's, oh, yes.
Halsey
Okay,
McLean.
yes. In any event, there was something in the paper, and her great line, which I thought was terrific, was that she was a great housekeeper. She said, every time I get divorced, I keep the house.
I thought that was Magna's house. It was in Strasbourg. I thought it was her sister's.
Maybe that's, it's so long ago.
Galucci was her
Yeah.
husband, Galucci.
Yes, right. Anyhow, that's it.
That's it? Thank you.
I don't know, I never jumped in on anything, because I just...
There will be a public comment and after we're
Yeah.
done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but it's okay.
We're getting there. No,
getting
no,
there.
no. Well, thank you for your patience.
We thought you were interested in what we were doing. How do you spell good morning?
We need a little company. The comment I have is really, I think Trustee Grimsky was going to elaborate on it, is that we had a ocean rescue down at Crider Lane just, I guess it's 2 days ago now.
Correct, yes,
Yeah.
yesterday.
And that ocean has been really rough and putting on a good surge, and I had spoken to our ocean rescue people, and in any event, these two individuals went out, got themselves in trouble, and the beauty of it was that the very thing that I think brings us all to Southampton Village took place, and it was the joining of different individuals all coming together to rescue these two individuals. And that is just in the community is an absolutely terrific thing to see. And the chief of police, Chris Brenner, sent me a note, and I'll read what he said to you. Southampton Bathing Court lifeguards, and I may get their pronunciation wrong, but Brenda Cardy, Grace Middlecoff, Nick Bontempo braved the rough waters and saved a male subject who was trapped in the ocean. Cooper's lifeguards, Mike Purcell, Dave Nichols, assisted along with Dean McNamara from the Southampton Fire Department. It was a great team effort. They all came together. It's comforting to know what we have such great lifeguards here in the great village of Southampton, whether they work for the village or private clubs. Chief Brenner, Southampton Fire Department. All I can say is that was a lucky individual, and he was lucky that we had these lifeguards that were available and went down there and risked their lives to save an individual. And these lifeguards are, I said they get younger every year, but they aren't older guys. They're young teenagers, early 20s, and truly thank them all.
Amazing.
It's
Wonderful.
absolutely amazing. Last year, we had lost an individual, and that really what stimulated me to do the ocean rescue. And unfortunately, East Hampton lost a female, I guess, 3 days ago in a similar situation, and they couldn't get to her. So, thank them all. Great job. People coming together, so important. Just like the community from here that we're discussing their parking issues. It's really a pleasure to see.
Could I just say something, Mayor, on that, from the SAFE? Two things about, yes, how very fortunate that individual was, but circumstances that happened there, and it was the person dialed 411 instead of 911, so it was somebody not from here. That usually is a case, so it's a communication thing. But that person, both the people, but the one that was pulled out was very fortunate because it happened during the middle of the day when both lifeguards were on duty, both at the private bathing corp and at the public Cooper's Beach.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I say that is people really need to be mindful, especially when you're not from here, that, and it was a pretty rough day. And riptides that people can't see, it starts with the person going in the water. You got to be careful and be mindful. If there's a choice to go somewhere where the lifeguard is, I recommend you go where there's something with a lifeguard. So that person was very fortunate for a couple reasons that we had lifeguards on duty that were able to were able to assist very quickly, which is again leads to why he did the ocean rescue, which that'll be around to help as well. But we can't get them all, unfortunately.
The unfortunate thing with our ocean that people have to realize is that when she starts to get rough and throw a pretty good heave on, it scours out the beach. So people have a tendency, they get hot, it's been hot the last couple of days and pretty muggy, and they go, it's rough, I'm not going to go swimming, but I'm going to wade out there and cool off. Well, the difficulty is that your feet can be knocked out from underneath you very quickly.
Correct.
And when you have the scouring going on, you have a lot of water moving forward, and it's got to go somewhere. And it picks you up, and the next thing you know, you're beyond the breakers and wondering how you're going to get back. So
you got to
be very careful.
Respectful and somewhat fearful of it.
We got a bunch of great events coming up here. Southampton Arts Center has an exciting exhibition opening Friday, Counterpoint. And this is a great showing, Peter Marino collection. It's probably the largest art showing I think we've ever had in the village, isn't it?
I think that's
I don't know, but it's
pretty close.
pretty close. And it promises to be a spectacular show, and the public opening and reception is Friday from 6 to 8. So that's really something not to miss. The other thing I saw here, you have the concerts in the park, and coming up tomorrow, which I love, is the Steel Orchestra, which will be at Agawam Park. And then on August 1st, it will be the Loan Sharks, which will be at Cooper's Beach. And that concert starts at 6:30. And also at SAC Friday night, we're continuing with Spielberg, and free outdoor films continue with The Hook.
The Hook? Hook is this weekend?
Presented with Hamptons International Film Festival, and movie starts at 8:30. And speaking of movies, on Monday, the Southampton Chamber of Commerce kicks off their drive-in movie series at Cooper's Beach. Great with anybody with a convertible. With a film Inside Out. Gates open at 6:30 and the movie starts at dark. So there's, once again, what a great community and so much going on. It's sort of hard to keep up with it all, but great things to go see. And that's all I have. And now we have the second.
Okay, so sorry to keep you all, because I waited now a while, and I didn't want to jump in on all these other people that were here.
If you could just state your name.
Oh, yes, Denise Simpson, 132 Old Town Road. And my beef is with beach parking at Old Town Road. I see that one very wealthy individual has gotten a lot of beach passes for his staff, and they're there parking for work because he doesn't want them on his property. So I just think that's unfair to the individuals who want to go to the beach.
Yeah, to mention names.
I know you're allowed to get so many passes for, you could buy them, and I was told that people buy them for as many cars as they have. If they're very wealthy, they could afford it.
And if they use them for the beach, that's one thing, and I have no problems with that. I've had a wait the last 3 years now, this year included, I'm talking about, is like at least 12 cars, and there's no one at the beach. And I've seen it where they park, and I just have a little problem with that I feel I can't even get a space at the beach on a Friday afternoon last Friday.
That's sort of become a new thing as of recent. They've been buying permits for.
Well, he's setting a bad precedence, I think, too, also, because what if, like, someone on Wyandotte, I can name a name, wants to buy a few passes for that beach? People, love going to that beach. They love going to Old Town, and that's where I live, and I like going there. And I'll go to other beaches also, but I just feel that there must be, it says beach parking. It doesn't say staff parking on those stickers. So there is a little bit of a issue there, I think. I mean, he could buy as many as he wants. He could afford them. But he doesn't want to park on his street or his, I don't know what the solution could be. If there's a shuttle he needs to get for his staff, maybe they could park at the village, the town hall, back of the movie theater. I don't know,
Or smaller staff.
Yeah, he's got quite a lot.
But we're not singling
We'll let
anybody
you
out.
address that one.
It's an issue that's coming up.
Put a knock on his door and bring that up.
Yeah, by the way, yes. So I don't know why he's got a big staff now and not 4 years ago or 5 years ago.
I don't know.
I know he's got a lot of pull for the village, maybe, I don't know. So that was just my issue.
He has no more pull than anyone else.
Not,
He just apparently cut the check for all those passes. But that's an interesting point.
but it's supposed to be for beach parking.
It is. Otherwise, you'll have businesses getting their landscape trucks there. That's going to be a problem.
And I understand with the landscape trucks too, that's a big issue. So, anyway, so is there anything I can do about it? I mean, go protest to him or,
You always have the right to do that as a citizen.
Yes, you can do that.
By all means.
Just don't tell him we
He
sent
likes
you.
protesters, like a protest.
Get there early.
But,
No, but it's something we need to take a look at going forward.
I'm sorry, what?
It's something we need to look at going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big issue, and after being stressed out hearing about all those people's issues with parking, I know it's,
Well, no, it's a big issue.
it's just something I like to do. I like to go to the ocean and relax, and that's
Beach
my...
parking is our gem.
Yes, that's another thing, right. So I'm sure a lot of people are not aware of it. And if he only had like 2 stickers or 3 for his staff, I wouldn't even probably have...
if you don't
even
mind me
notice.
asking, devil's advocate, how do you know they're his staff? And I mean, that's really what it boils down to, is proof
I'll
of
tell you
anything.
why, because first of all, in the last 2 years, I didn't realize it until this year. I said, I thought maybe it was the houses being built over there, right across from the Old Town Pond. But yesterday when I went to the beach, was it yesterday after work, there was no one on the beach, hardly at all. And there's like at least 12 cars I counted with the green stickers, the summer stickers. And then when I came out to my car, they were all shifting. White shirts with the beige pants going back and forth in his house. You can see where they were walking down to Murray Lane there. Yeah, so they were definitely his staff.
The article in the Sunday Times magazine about him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's obviously not about his parking habits. World situations that he's in.
I had a caterer at his house one time in the city, and I met his chef and everybody, he was a very nice man, but I know he's had staff like that, and so anyway, that's
Well, it's something we'll look into.
sorry for all this. I know, it was interesting to listen to the deer management.
How would we have known that if you hadn't said something? I wouldn't know that.
No, we don't.
So do I need to come to another meeting with other people, or do I need
No,
to?
but what can we do about it is going to be the problem.
Maybe just a phone call, a pleasant one first.
I mean, he's already got his stickers, he purchased
I mean, unfortunately, to answer your question, to the point of it, there's no law being broken. It's parking for anyone with a pass, and a pass is on a car, and they're parking there. Now, what the intended use for is really not specified. Ambiguous, if you will.
It says beach on the sticker, right?
Well, but that's a nice interpretation of it, but again, just legally speaking, there are, because you're looking an answer what's to be done, and unfortunately, the true answer is there's nothing that can be done. Currently, the way it's stated, there's no law being broken. It's a little obscene,
it may be rude, but it's not illegal. And that's really, I think, an answer you're looking for, and nothing really can be remedied other than, as Trustee Allen said, that maybe a polite phone call is always a nice way to start with any type of resolution.
Right, and she always
We
has
could
good
send him a
ideas.
letter, honestly, that we've received a complaint of what he's done, and we wish he would
Again, that's
change his
the first
habits,
line of
and he
defense, but again...
might react to it.
You know, as it's currently stated, parking is only allowed there with a proper parking pass, and
Right,
those
and he's
vehicles
got
have
it,
them.
right, yeah. Would you ever...
And he paid as prescribed.
And I know the village doesn't want to limit those because I'm sure they make a lot of money, and...
But that's being looked into, that can be...
I don't think we want to see it abused either.
Yeah, it's
Right.
you know, if it's being used for commercial, because we do have provisions to allow parking for commercial short-term, like construction and so forth, and movies and film shoots and so forth.
Right.
So, and parties and camping. So
Parties,
there are
right.
things that do allow for short-term parking in areas where typically you would not. That may now one extra thing we have to look into.
But it begs the question, I have seen many people ask their staff not to park in their driveways
Well,
because
no,
they don't want to see it.
Yes.
But everybody else has to deal with it, either with obstacle courses,
Yes.
getting to and from wherever they want to go, and our vistas, so...
Yeah, no, it's just rude. It's arrogant,
It
because I
is.
don't want to ruin their vista, so
Right.
it's ruined the public vista. All right.
Okay, so
thank
I
you.
said my piece.
Yep.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
And thank you for waiting and observing the meeting.
back again.
The process.
Interesting, I'll be back with another one.
Okay.
Tell this vision to no one. Tell this vision to no one.
Any other public comments?
Charlie has...
Charlie.
Took his hat off, too. My. Cleaned up.
I think we all realize that there was a lot of problem with moving around in the village, even throughout the town. But it seems like one of the issues that causes me the biggest anguish is when people do something, I believe they call it blocking the box, where somebody pulls into the intersection and they have no place to go. And then the light changes, and then the traffic wanting to go the other way has no place to go because they can't drive through these people. So to me, it seems like, I believe there's a law against blocking the box, and maybe we need a little enforcement on when people pull into the intersection and block everything, so gridlock occurs from it. My final comment is, and I probably should have said it before when I was up here when you presented the flag, which I believe now, in my opinion, belongs to the village of Southampton. I was hoping that the flag will serve as a constant reminder that this country, not just New York City, has been under attack. And I think this country is still under attack by a lot of evil people inside this country and from without. So the only thing I could say is to the public, if you see something, say something, and maybe it'll help to deter some of the things that happen. With that, thank you very much and good evening.
Charlie, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
As always, something that the TV set every night, and I'm watching what's going on.
With no further comments, I make a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters involving village employees.
Second. Aye.